that of poor navigation at some of the airports across the country. Furthermore, some of the airports in Zambia lack the required infrastructure to support larger aircraft than is currently in use in some of the international destinations. Therefore, this measure will address those particular concerns. Another notable measure is to transform Kenneth Kaunda International Airport into an aviation transport hub for the SADC region. This will be of critical importance if the vision of the policy to have an efficient and integrated transport system in Zambia by 2028 is to be realized. As will be elaborated on in the section below on opportunities, Zambia has a unique and strategic geographic location which presents opportunities for it to become a transport hub for the SADC region. Both of these measures are notable aspirations, and PMRC is of the view that the national transport policy, as it relates to aviation, is adequate in governing the operations of Zambia Airways. However, as is often the case, what remains is implementation, and this will require significant financial investment. We'll move on to the legal framework. So the laws governing the aviation industry in Zambia are as follows: the Civil Authority Act No. 7 of 2012, the Civil Aviation Act No. 5 of 2016, the Zambia Information and Communication Technology Authority Act No. 15 of 2009, and the Zambia Environmental Management Act No. 12 of 2011. The Civil Aviation Act is the overarching law for the industry and consolidates the various laws on aviation. It domesticates provisions of the International Convention on Civil Aviation, herein referred to as the Chicago Convention, to which Zambia is a contracting state. This law regulates air carriers, airlines and their aircraft, and commercial air transport operations generally. The Civil Aviation Act incorporates international civil aviation organization legislation, including provisions to establish a state aviation safety program. The Civil Aviation Authority Act establishes the Civil Aviation Authority as a fully independent body with responsibilities as provided by the Chicago Convention. The CAA is the national competent authority in connection with air transport. It implements international civil aviation standards as a regulator of the aviation sector. Section 76(5) of the Act requires the authority to develop and make recommendations to the minister responsible for transport in respect of civil aviation international agreements with other states, governments, and international organizations. The authority is also required to monitor compliance with the Civil Aviation Act and the Convention. The ZICTA Act provides for the allocation of radio frequencies to be used by the aviation industry, and the ZIMA will move on to the short and long-term mechanisms put in place to ensure the profitability of the airline. So in terms of the short-term mechanisms, they began their operations with one aircraft, and that allowed for low costs, which will allow for the gradual introduction of further employment as and when it's needed. The use of in-house catering has drastically reduced catering costs by 200 to 300%. The aircraft, which is a Dash 8 Q400, is fuel efficient, using one engine to take off as opposed to two, which results in saving 17 to 18% of fuel. Number 4, the introduction of low fares to capture a high volume of travelers. Number 5, they started operations during the COVID-19 pandemic at a time when airlines were losing revenue in light of refund requests and other challenges. And lastly, increasing domestic flight frequency. In terms of the long-term mechanisms, they will begin the commencement of flights to different regional and international destinations, the further expansion of local flights, own in-flight catering services in Lusaka, the establishment of in-house maintenance service, and the introduction of a wide-body fleet to its operations. Move on to the challenges faced by Zambia Airways and the opportunities in its operations. So the airline faces a number of challenges, including the following. They have limited capital to grow the business. There's been a delay in receiving foreign operator permits, e.g. from South Africa, and this is preventing the airline from tapping into regional routes. This is also in breach of reciprocal arrangements as provided by the Chicago Convention and the Civil Aviation Act. Then number 3, some airport facilities lack adequate infrastructure to allow for bigger aircrafts, e.g. the number of fire tracks and the length of runways. Number 4, non-approval of a tax waiver which was applied for has resulted in significant tax bills despite the status of the airline as a national air carrier. Number 5, the airline lacks vehicles for marketing purposes. Number 6, there are high operational costs such as that of jet fuel. Number 7, navigation is poor at some airports, e.g. Simon Mwanza-Kapwepwe International Airport in Ndola, and this requires the precision approach. Number 8, the lack of customers. There is a need to mobilize more. Number 9, poor on-time performance as evidenced by passengers arriving late for flights. And the last one is growth in airline capacity also means more environmental damage by way of carbon emissions. Old technology aircrafts do relatively more damage to the environment than new technology aircraft. Then we move on to the opportunities. Zambia's geographic location gives it a comparative advantage to become a transportation hub in Africa. It sits 1,200 meters above sea level with no mountains or hills which require aircrafts to move around. This means multiple planes could land at once. Number 2, the geographic location affords Zambia Airways the opportunity to fly to 8 destinations within 2 hours. The third one, Zambia's intellectual, by that we mean well-educated population, hospitality culture, and networking capacity can result in good service. Growth of the tourism sector that the airline can exploit by opening new routes to tourism destinations. Number 5, an opportunity to develop a training school for pilots given the quality of academies in the country. Number 6, the partnership with Ethiopian Airways is an opportunity to benefit from its expertise and to have access to different types of aircraft. Number 7, there is an opportunity to transport passengers from other airlines when there is a demand as a third-party operator. This can prevent them from needing to deal with refund claims, etc. And then according to Zambia Airways, 20% of African skies are serviced by African airlines, while 80% is foreign serviced. So the environment is ripe for African airlines. And the availability of airports, which include the Kenneth Kaunda International Airport, the Simon Mwanza-Kapwepwe International Airport, Harry Mwanga Nkumbula International Airport, and provincial and district aerodromes. And then number 10, opportunities to mobilize first-time travelers. And we conclude with recommendations on how to enhance the management and operations of Zambia Airways. So there is a need for government to expedite discussions relating to the application by Zambia Airways for tax waivers in view of it being a national carrier. Secondly, PMRC urges government to donate vehicles confiscated by Zambia Revenue Authority to Zambia Airways for use in its marketing campaign. Thirdly, in order to improve efficiency, ground handling services should be expanded, that is to allow airlines to attend to their own ground handling. Fourthly, there is need for a general paradigm shift towards supporting the national carrier given its strategic importance. Number 5, PMRC recommends the development of airport infrastructure and airport navigation equipment to allow Zambia Airways to fly to lower level airports. And the last one, government is urged to invoke Section 113 of the Civil Aviation Act as it relates to the discrimination of citizen providers of airport services. As this is based on reciprocal arrangements, foreign airlines should be suspended from landing until this is normalized. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, witness. I'll now ask honorable members to interact with the witness. We'll take a round of 3 questions, allow the witness to respond, and then we'll go for the next round. Honorable Sialubalo.
Thank you so much, Chair. Witness, if you did your research well, you go to ProFlight and also Zambia Airways offices. You'll find that the fares charged by ProFlight are quite high compared to Zambia Airways. Zambia Airways is almost clocking 1 year, but when it comes to clientele, it is still performing below par in comparison with Zambia Airways. Indeed, we need to support Zambia Airways because it is our own. Fares are quite relatively low, but clients are not willing to go that route. Where do you think Zambia Airways is getting it wrong to amass enough number of clients? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Honorable Smushi.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for that presentation. We are coming from Zambia Airways, the former, which went under. And I think a lot of issues went wrong for us to have resulted in that situation. Now, from a research point of view, I expect that you must have looked at why Zambia Airways went under. Now, my question is, the coming in of this new airline, what have we incorporated into its establishment that has taken into consideration those negative aspects that led to Zambian Airways to go under? And do you think those have been considered in this case?
Any more questions? Maybe let me ask some rider questions to what my colleagues have asked so far. Page 7, recommendations on how to enhance the management and operations of Zambia Airways. Under bullet 1 and 2, under bullet 1 and 2, the witness recommends a preferential treatment for Zambia Airways. Has a witness looked or considered the fact that Zambia Airways is operating as a private business, as is, and as it's operating under or as a private business, how does preferential treatment sit with the existing competition in the aviation industry? That's my first question, and of course directly related to bullet 1 and 2 on page 7. Secondly, being a think tank, does a witness believe that the country has the required policy framework to allow it to become that aviation hub and exploit its geographical positioning? Again, this is related to some of the recommendations the committee or the witness has made in their submission. And if the policy framework is not adequate, what would be the gaps as identified by the think tank? Lastly, Does the witness see Ethiopian Airlines as more of a partner and less of a competitor, or vice versa, to Zambia Airways? Thank you. Honorable Samakai? Or we can allow the witness to respond, then we'll take the next round.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Beginning with the first question, I must say that one of the reasons why Zambia Airways is actually charging lesser fares than ProFlight is that of a marketing strategy. So when you're looking at businesses as they are entering a new market, they try by all means to make their prices more competitive than others to increase demand, and that's one of the reasons as to why. So going forward, in order for us to increase the demand, I think it's imperative that we improve on the promotion of the airline marketing. And also when you're looking at the launching of the airline, it actually took long and people actually forgot about it. So it's imperative that maybe other people might not be aware that the airline, it's important to on the marketing strategy. The same way that they use the low prices for entry point, they can also look at other strategies aimed at increasing visibility for the airline. Then looking at some of the factors that led to the closure of the airline in 1994, the issues to do with corporate governance and also issues to do with the airline being seen as a government entity. It wasn't seen as a private entity. And this is actually wrong when you're looking at it in terms of business. So the way it is, the owner has to separate themselves from business. But what we saw is that there was some politicians as well as some staff from the airline that were abusing the airline. Where you'd find that they would actually let their relatives or maybe other people to just ride on the airlines without paying. So that was one of the factors that led to that. Then there's also poor infrastructure. When we're looking at the airports that we have, even the airstrips, there've been poor infrastructure. But going forward with the various national development plan, we've seen the government has put in place strategies and programs aimed at improving the airlines as well as the airline infrastructure. We've seen the improvement of the Kenneth Kaunda International Airport as well as Ndola. So that will actually reduce such effects also happening now. Then I think the other thing that led to so poor infrastructure, then also the business. Then the third question, it should have been in line with the Ethiopian airline as being seen as a competitor rather than a partner. So the way it is, Zambia Airlines or Zambian side owns about 55% of shares, whereas Ethiopian Airlines owns 45%. So when you're looking at the ways in which the engagement came in, the Ethiopian Airlines had to provide expertise as well as the aircrafts themselves, and Zambians will also maybe just provide that environment in which the airline can operate. So as it is right now, beggars cannot be choosers. We have a lot of benefits that we can have, but going alone just solely as Zambians to operate the airline, that is something that we might not be able to do. So, and also for Ethiopian Airlines, the other countries that have also engaged them, such as Malawi, so we're not the first ones. So we can just also learn lessons from Malawi and see how best we can capitalize on this partnership. Then moving on to the policy framework, the issue of infrastructure, even just the national airlines, it's something that
Witness,
has to be...
just a minute. Sorry to interrupt. So if beggars can be choosers, who are beggars in this case and who are the choosers?
So we, unfortunately, the Zambian side are the beggars because we were trying to revamp our airlines, and you know the way it is, it's a PPP approach, private-public partnership. So even when you're going into such, it reduces on government costs as well. So we are standing more to gain than we are to lose. If we went in solely, we wouldn't have been able to actually revamp our airline.
Just a rider. Zambia has 55% shareholding. ET has 45% shareholding. How does a beggar chooser scenario play out in that case?
So the way the airline is, like my colleague has mentioned, the direct as well as indirect jobs that come with it. So from the indirect aspect, government can gain some taxes from the people that will be operating in the airlines, in terms of payee, they can get payee, and also it will be a way of also revamping our sector. The way the airline is, it's a multi-sectoral approach. It's not just something that will be beneficial to the aviation sector, but we also have infrastructure, we have commerce and industry that has a line to play. So for us, we might not directly gain the benefits from having the airline from the direct aspect, but we can also grow our other sectors such as tourism, and that will also fall onto government. That's not something that the Ethiopian might be able to capitalize on. So in as much as the shares might look as though they are not equal in some way, but we have other sectors that are gaining indirectly from this, which would have lost out if we did not even go into this partnership.
You may continue.
So I was talking about the multi-sector approach. So for the airline, we're looking at it in terms of, you looked at policy, the policy framework, if it's adequate enough. So for the way it is, like I've said, the aviation sector is actually, it's multi-sector. Even when you're looking at the 8th National Development Plan, transport and logistics is actually an enabler for the key drivers of the economy, such as tourism, agriculture, manufacturing. So even like when you're looking at this, the various policies that have the aviation and transport aspect in them, when you're looking at the tourism, maybe the tourism policy, it has that aspect of developing infrastructure within the aviation sector. When we also look at, with the new concept that we're having, the continental free trade area, so even from the commerce side, we'll have policy that will speak into the aviation sector. So it might, other than the actual policy that speaks on aviation, the other supporting policies that we can ride on, which stipulates various measures. And not only that, we also have the tourism master plan, of which aviation is a very key component of that. So there are various programs that government is going to undertake within the period 2018 to 2038. So those are also kind of ways in which we can enhance the policy framework. And if we do, and even from the presentation, we said the aspects of the framework is adequate, but what is required is financial support. So we can have these various pieces of legislation, but without finances to implement these programs, we'll be doing nothing. So what we call for as well is just to expedite the implementation by ensuring that the finances that are available for us to grow the sector. I don't know if you want to add.
Thank you. Honorable Chairperson, members, in addition, on the question of whether we have an adequate policy framework and in our endeavor to exploit our geographical position, we think that there's need to implement, first of all, the robust provisions in the legislation. But other than that, we think there is a big gap in the policy framework which is not oriented to the business that we can anchor the aviation sector on. So if we look at the aviation sector as also having a major business component, anchoring it also on the strategic visions of the tourism sector, I think a comprehensive review is inevitable. We'll be looking at a review of all the policies and also bringing on board the business aspect, which we think is glaringly absent in the framework.
Thank you. The fellow has answered my question. Yeah. Honorable.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I take you to recommendations number 5, where you are recommending the development of airport infrastructure and airport navigation equipment to allow Zambia Airways to fly to lower level airports. I think that we all appreciate the development of the infrastructure, all of our airports and aerodromes. But I think for Zambia Airways to operate as a business, it is important that these aerodromes and airports must prove that they are a viable market for the business of Zambia Airways. Now, I don't know what the implication of your recommendation vis-a-vis what I have said, because to me it implies that you want to provide subsidies. The Zambia Airways must provide subsidies, provide the services, even in areas where it is inefficient for them to run the company. Maybe your comment on that. The other issue that I would want to find out from you, which I think she touched on, the issue of the contributions, the equity into this company. You are saying that the Ethiopian Airways has come in with the aircraft. We would want to know whether the aircraft itself, a Q400, is the initial contribution of the Ethiopian Airways, or the Q400 will be financed from the operations of the Zambia Airways. If it's going to be financed from the operations of this marriage, of this joint venture, how then could it be said to be a contribution of the Ethiopian Airways? Would you elucidate on that position?
Honorable Smushi.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm going back to the response that she gave, where she pointed out that we are beggars in this case, and therefore we are at the mercy of Ethiopian Airways. So, what do we need to do to avoid a situation where, in case Ethiopian Airways were to pull out today from this agreement, and then if I'm correctly in terms of how she put it, it means it would definitely fail to go ahead with this initiative. So what is it that we need to do now, maybe to avoid such a situation from happening?
Yeah, maybe before the witness comes in, just for purposes of being very clear, whether it's a submission of the witness that the model or the scenario of the beggar chooser is what is being submitted by the witness to this committee. Is that the official, is that what you're submitting to this committee?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I think it was just lack of a better term. As you know, maybe even when you're trying to speak, there are certain words that actually get caught in your thoughts, and you maybe use layman words to actually say that. That's not, okay, I was just putting it as a metaphor, or maybe it could have been used as a synonym for this case, but mostly as a metaphor, not the actual submission that we're making. Yes. And then maybe to just go, with regards to, I'll answer the first and the third question, then my colleague will answer the second question. So with regards to the first question, our recommendation that we gave on the development of air infrastructure, I think I do agree with the honorable member to say that we need to actually look at it in terms of the demand. And even going forward, there is need for a market study to be done. So as it is right now, there are certain places where the demand is there, but we don't have airstrips. Or airports per se. I can give an example of Chipata. The closest airport that is there is Mfue. So if we could open maybe some of these key strategic locations and maybe where we can see tourist destinations, those could also be some of the great key areas to start with. But nevertheless, to say if we do have the aspirations of being a transportation hub, we do need to facilitate the demand for air aviation sector, as well as also to improve on the infrastructure. But what is key is also doing a market study. And I think even as they are going in with as an airline, it would be prudent for them to conduct that market study. And also with the Ministry of Infrastructure and other line ministries can also see which get recommendations of which areas can be targeted first. And then looking at the viability of the airline, in order for us to maybe improve on it, the recommendations actually speak on how we can sustain the sector and how we can also lessen on our dependency on the Ethiopian side. And I think the main thing that we need to do right now is to improve our tourism sector. I think it's one of the largest areas in which we get demand for the aviation sector. So if we can improve on tourism, we would also be able to have trickle down or multiply effects that we can harness from the aviation sector. Then also, we just need to strengthen our marketing strategy for the Zambian airlines and just position ourselves, and maybe also looking with the CFTA, we can also harness some opportunities from that can ensure that our aviation sector is going to be quite sustainable. As it is right now, we do have the geographic location that can make us a transportation hub. It could be also the next Dubai. So we have that opportunity. So we just need to develop it and find how best we can harness the aviation sector. And after that, I'm sure it will be self-sustainable, and we can even draw out some of these partnerships. But we also need to see the terms of agreements that are there with regards to the Ethiopian Airlines. We do not have the technical agreements that were put in place, so we can be proposing things that have legal clauses that we might not be able to do, but from the aspect of which, other than all things held constant, without us seeing the terms of reference, I think that would be the best way in which we can ensure the sustainability of the airline.
Chair, thank you. Just to sort of also respond to Honorable Smushi's sentiment where he mentioned about in case of pullout, what should Zambia do? Yes, because certainly every partner gets into a business for the purposes of making profit, and at the rate at which the Zambian Airways is operating, there could be room in future where Ethiopian Airlines probably would decide maybe to pull out, and what should we do? I think what is very critical now is to try and look at the best possible. We could have, even before we started, we could have looked at the best possible measures in terms of what business partners we were going to come on board, okay? And of course try to, by all means, get some best practices in terms of how themselves as Ethiopian Airlines have managed to have a successful airline for the country. We look at some of the challenges that countries like the Kenyan airline, South African airline are facing, and then we draft up a strategy that could actually be able to withstand some of these pressures, because certainly most of these pressures are likely going to come over as Zambian Airways continue to operate. And so we need to have a clear strategy in terms of how we are going to conquer some of these challenges. We all know that currently, that's why it even delayed to kick off, that there is a financial constraint on the part of government. And so the only way was that of partnership. So it is quite important that we need to, even as a country, have a strategy that in case of failure, what is it that we are going to do? I submit.
Thank you so much, witness. I'm going to allow for one question, Honorable Smushi. Yes, Honorable.
Yes.
I raised a question which you talked about the contribution of Ethiopian Airways contributing an aircraft. Yeah, now I was asking, is that the initial contribution, or the aircraft is going to be paid through the revenues that are accruing from the operations of that marriage between ET and Zambia Airways?
Okay, so for that one, Honorable, it was that was the initial contribution. Then anything else with regards to growing the fleet, it had to come from the profits of the airline's operations. And I think also the other aspect that I had mentioned with regards to the transparency of some of these agreements, some of them are not made public. Maybe it's because there's a legal aspect to it, or it's on behalf of the other. So there's certain information that we might not be privy to, and even going forward, we need to have transparency as well as access to information. That's why we call for the access to information bill. That way we'll be able to know each and every clause that is there. So as it is right now, they say it's the initial contribution, but we don't know other aspects of the operation because they're not made public.
Honorable Samushi.
Chair, actually, it's okay.
Honorable Salwalo.
Thank you so much. The government talks of skills transfer in everything that we do currently, so that in the near future, everything can be done by Zambians. Now, I want to find out whether skills transfer is applicable in this case scenario. Well, now, because what we are seeing is that uniforms, the information that we have is that uniform is being done in Ethiopia. When it comes to major servicing of the plane, it has to fly to Ethiopia. Now, I want to know whether it is really applicable. Is there anything for Zambia in the near future? In an event that Ethiopia Airways, like Honorable Samushi indicated, they pull out, what would we have learned as Zambians to carry the mantle ourselves? Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Lungo.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much for your presentation, and I just wanted to state how important it is for the submissions that we're making to the House. So I just wanted to seek clarity on one issue, a response that was given on politicians being part of the blame for the downfall of the former Zambia Airways. Was it government or was it politicians? I just wanted clarity because the politicians were not in charge of the daily operation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think my question, Honorable Kapianga.
Thank you so much, Chair. And thank you for your elaborate submissions. Chair, I have perused through this document and I've not seen where perhaps the witness could have taken time to highlight the best practices of other national airlines that have successfully launched and are making a lot of profits. How did they start? Because we should also be talking about those so that going forward Zambia Airways can also learn. I'm talking about national airlines such as Tanzania Air, Rwanda Air. How did they start? How have they succeeded? Because those are the things that we need to also look at as we are talking about a national airline of our own country. We can talk about the legal frameworks and whatever it is, but for as long as we have not learned a thing, more especially that we have a history of having failed to run our own national airline. This time around, we need to learn the best practices. Witness, did you take time also to look at what kind of strategies are these other national airlines that have a success story implemented to be where they are today? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Honorable. I'm going to ask my question probably after the witness has responded to these questions. Witness?
Thank you very much, Chair. On the clarity with regards to politicians, maybe just beg your pardon, we're actually meant to mean the government, the ones that were in government at the time. I think that time it was MMD. And it's not only the politicians themselves, but also from staff members. So the abuse was from politicians as well as government, the government at that time, as well as staff members. Then now coming to issues to do with best practices, we did try to look at best practices, also looking at maybe countries that have actually revamped their airlines more of how we did it ourselves as Zambia. And one of the countries we looked at was Malawi. Unfortunately, I think for Malawi, they're also kind of incurring losses as it is, so we did not want to bring bad news in case we say that going forward we close the airline, so we tried by all means to give ourselves some time as well. That's why we did not include the aspect of best practices. So Malawi has a similar partnership as Zambia, where they've also partnered with Ethiopian Airlines, and they do have losses. And like I mentioned, to say that the aviation sector is multi-sectoral. So in the aspect of aviation, you might incur losses, but other sectors that might be incurring profits, that's why they continue to operate. Another example I can give is South Africa, that has also recorded losses as an airline, but they do not close it because they know that it has a trickle-down effect on other sectors. So maybe those are some of the two best practices that we can actually look at. With regards to professional development, I had mentioned that one of the reasons why the airline actually went under was that of a poor corporate governance. So even when you're looking at it with regards to this, I think most of the management is coming from the Ethiopian side so as to maybe have continuous development for the Zambian side. And once that is done, they can actually just let it all be to the Zambian aspect. Even for pilots, we have many coming from the Ethiopian side that are also passing on their skills onto the Zambian professionals as well.
I think with regards to what has worked for some of the airlines, despite that they've been able to make losses, others are thriving. I think when you look at a small airline like that of Mozambique, what has allowed some of them to continue thriving is that of creating stronger partnerships. For example, if you are going to go to Mozambique, they have a strong partnership with South African Airline, where you will board on South African Airline from here. Automatically, you have to get on a Mozambican aircraft to take you to Mozambique. And so these are some of the strategies that we need to partner with several other countries that are already operating some of the aircraft. And of course, getting to understand some of the economic activities happening in different areas, we could actually tap from that. For example, we are at a center of many other countries, and we could actually be a central route. And so what we could do is to try and be like an aircraft or a company, an airways that is able to get passengers and carry them over to the next destination. And that is possible, like what other countries are doing, as opposed to having so many routes but being taken over by other foreign aircraft. So I think that stronger partnerships would be very critical in terms of sustaining Zambia Airways going forward.
Thank you. And maybe the last question. And again, maybe building upon issues of best practices, etc. We've got Bole Airport in Ethiopia, and how Ethiopia has managed to transition themselves as a hub. We've got South Africa as a hub. We've got Dubai as an aviation hub. Has your think tank thought about advising in terms of policy again, what it is that government can do to attract the aviation industry to Zambia? In terms of comparative advantage, there are very few countries that enjoy the sort of geographical positioning we enjoy and which we've not exploited. 8 countries surrounding us, right at the hub of the 8 countries. Has the think tank sort of packaging or working on an advisory to government, learning from these other hubs? If Bole, Ethiopia has done it, South Africa, which is right at the bottom of the continent, has done it, and we're right in the center. You've got Dubai, which is in a desert, and they've done it. Is that something that you'd probably wish to look at as a think tank? And what would be, even including the implications of such a policy on national treasury? I think that's something that I would want the witness to respond to, maybe especially the fellow herself. Thank you, witness.
I think before she even responds, I think I can actually attest that we are trying to create a working synergy or relationship with the Zambian Airways, and to that, certainly that will lead into looking at the issues of policy as well as matters to do with what sort of synergies in terms of other overarching policies that would be able to influence the development of the aviation sector. But I think let the
And my question is beyond Zambia Airways. Yes, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. In terms of packaging and advisory to government, yes, we already have a foundation in what went wrong with Zambia Airways QZ. So we can start from there, draw lessons from how that collapsed, build on the best practices that you've just alluded to, Bole, Dubai, and I think others in the sub-region, because here our attempt is to draw traffic to Lusaka and our other major international airports. So yes, we do have, I think, what are the building blocks for this advisory to government. And as Edie has alluded, the working relationship, that is, or the partnership that we are trying to establish with Zambian Airways would definitely give us food for thought in terms of how we package this particular advisory. We also have aspects of the unequal playing field, but we have the Chicago Convention that already stipulates what all contracting states are supposed to do. So what is it that we are not doing, and what is it that we can do better? The answers, we believe, are already in those agreements. We also looking at the hidden nature of some of the agreements that we may have entered into. The partnership with Ethiopian Airways provides certain insights, I'm sure, that we can build on. There was a question on what we are doing about skills transfer. That continues to be a concern, but if we interrogate it further, I think we can find a happy medium between how this agreement was structured in terms of what can already be done in Zambia and the services that Zambia can offer without these services necessarily being done in another jurisdiction when the joint venture actually exists. So I think of interest for us, it will be to see what is in this joint venture agreement. To the extent that they can make it available to us, because we believe that some of the responses and some of the solutions to the problems we are facing in terms of not really leveraging our comparative advantage in terms of location and services and also expertise, because the expertise that QZ had didn't die with it. We believe that we still have some of those skills right here amongst our people. So what we need to do is actively do something about it. And the starting point would be to develop this policy intervention and then build on from there. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, Witness, and thank you for your appearance. Clearly, what is before us is for us to go beyond just the rhetoric. And I think that is a burden that you carry on your shoulders as a think tank. One of the monotonous songs you hear almost in every development forum is the fact that, our geographical positioning, maybe we must ask Honorable Tasira Lungu to probably move a motion to amend the National Anthem Act so that we can probably, add that to the National Anthem, geographical positioning. You find it every time, but what are we doing about it? And I think that's a challenge for think tanks, for the academia, higher institutions of learning. What are we doing to now move into the practical gear of maximizing our geographical positioning as a country? I think with those words, let me thank you on behalf of this committee. Thank you for making this appearance, and we greatly appreciate your contributions. We have no doubt that your contributions will enrich the report as we start to work on it. At this point, mine is to withdraw that immunity we conferred on you, but you remain enjoying the immunity that the Constitution of Zambia confers on you as citizens of this great country. Thank you so much, and please remember to carry your water. It's coming at no fee at all. Thank you. Witness, we want to welcome you to this session. We are grateful that you responded favorably to our invitation to make your submission on a very important topic. Before we go any further, Cap 12 of the laws of Zambia confers on you the immunity enjoyed by members of parliament as you appear before this committee, meaning that nothing that you say before this committee would be used against you in any court of law, and unless you choose to deliberately mislead the committee, then the same Cap 12 would work against you. We, however, see no reason why your distinguished selves would mislead this committee, and so we look forward to a truthful, objective discussion, with this committee, and we believe that the submissions will go a long way in helping us to come up with a report to enrich, the operations of this particular airline we're talking about, but also going further to improve the aviation industry in this country. With those few remarks, I'm going to ask the witness to introduce, yourselves, and thereafter members of this committee will introduce themselves. We've got some of our colleagues who are attending to other committees. You're going to see some of them coming in during the course of the discussion. It's because they are attending to other business around the parliament buildings. So with those few remarks, let me invite the witness to introduce yourself, and then thereafter we'll ask members of parliament to introduce themselves. Over to you, witness.
Thank you so much, Chairperson, for having us. Maybe before we proceed, like you mentioned, maybe I should introduce my team from Zambia Air Force. I'm Colonel Sesio Sakanya from Zambia Air Force Headquarters. At this stage, maybe I'll allow members of the team to introduce themselves before we proceed. Thank you, sir.
The Chair, I am Colonel Machiko from Operations Department, Zambia Air Force Headquarters. Thank you.
Good morning, the Chair. I am Major Chizalila from Administration Department, Zambia Air Force.
Good morning, the Chair. I'm Major Florence Mbere, a pilot from the Zambia Air Force.
Good morning, the Chair. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Njamba from Operations Department.
Good morning, the Chair. I'm Major Maiva, Transport Pilot, Zambia Air Force.
I'll ask colleagues to introduce themselves. I'll start with my immediate left.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, our witnesses. My names are Francis Robert Kapianga, Member of Parliament from Pika constituency.
Good morning, witness. I'm Frank Smushi, Member of Parliament for Congo constituency.
Good morning, Chair. My name is Newton Samakai, Member of Parliament for Mwinlonga constituency in the Northwestern Province, and I'm a member of this committee.
Good morning once more, Chair. I'm Honorable Dr. Tauro Chewe, Member of Parliament for Luanseshi constituency. I sit on this committee.
Thank you so much, Colonel, and your team. My name is Sande Chanda, Member of Parliament for Kanchibia constituency, and Vice Chairperson of this committee. We want to also thank you for submitting a nicely bound, report. I think it's a most attractive report. We didn't have problems finding it, amongst the many documents we had to deal with. So, a job well done. So you are very much welcome to this committee, and we are ready to listen. Over to you, witness.
Thank you so much, Chairperson, sir. Thank you so much also for the compliments. on the week. I must hasten to mention that amongst my team, I think we have a legal representation, and all of us are aircrew. That means we are all pilots from Zambia Air Force. Thank you so much. So thank you so much for the chairperson for having us today. Sir, the Zambia Air Force received a letter from this esteemed committee requesting us to conduct a study and submit a memorandum on the topical issue operations and management of Zambia Airways, challenges and opportunities. In your request, you asked for a detailed memorandum highlighting the following aspects: adequacy of the policy and the legal framework governing the operations and management of Zambia Airways, benefits of a national airline to Zambia, the short and long-term mechanisms put in place to ensure profitability of Zambia Airways, opportunities in its operations, and challenges faced by Zambia Airways, recommendations on how to enhance the management and operations of Zambia Airways. After which you asked also for any other information that may assist your committee on this subject matter. The chairperson said your committee receipt of our detailed report of our study. This morning, I, together with my team from Zambia Air Force, are here to give a brief summary of what our study covered on the assigned topic. With regards to the adequacy of the policy and the legal framework governing the operations and management of Zambia Airways, we wish to submit as follows. Zambia Airways has maintained an open skies policy since the state-owned national carrier was liquidated in 1994. It operates on a fifth-generation freedom, where operators have the freedom to transport, ferry, and pick passengers from within Zambia to other regional destinations. In 2014, the national airline, that is Zambia Airways 2014 Limited, was established as a registered owned company by the Industrial Development Corporation, referred to as IDC. Zambia Airways Limited was incorporated on 23rd July 2015 as a private company limited by shares with a board of directors. In the year 2018, the government of the Republic of Zambia under IDC, which is Industrial Development Corporation, entered into a joint venture with the Ethiopian Airline Group of Companies, referred to as ET, my submission, with a shareholding of 55% for the Zambian government under IDC and 45% for Ethiopian Airlines, respectively. In a bid to establish a foothold on which this partnership is anchored, the shareholders signed agreements, some of which include the following. There was a shareholders agreement. This agreement is a $30 million partnership between IDC, which are referred to as the Industrial Development Corporation, and Ethiopian Airlines. Out of which IDC made an investment of $16.5 million, equivalent to about 55% shareholding, distributed as $5 million for infrastructure and $11.5 million for operational costs. On the other hand, Ethiopian Airlines invested $13.5 million, which is equivalent to 45% shareholding, in form of aircraft lease of two Bombardier de Havilland -8 Q400 and one Boeing 737-800. The other agreement that was signed was a technical support services agreement. This agreement between the two shareholders was entered into for the purpose of maintenance of aircraft on the inventory of the airline. The third agreement was an aircraft lease agreement. This agreement was entered into for leasing of 3 aircraft that I had mentioned earlier from Ethiopian Airlines to Zambia Airways. The same aircraft, there are 2 Bombardier aircraft and 1 Boeing aircraft. The fourth agreement was an expertise support agreement. This agreement was entered into on 14th of June 2019 between Ethiopian group of companies and Zambian Airways for a period of 5 years for the provision of expertise, operational and business advice to Zambia Airways. Chair, sir, you may see that maybe from our submission we are leaving out some of the details of our report, just maybe mentioning the salience of our report submission. I'm sure if there are any other issues, may follow now as when we are done with our submission, sir. Yes, sir. So the national airline is governed by but not limited to the following legal framework and policies. The Civil Aviation Authority Act number 7 of 2012, the Civil Aviation Act number 5 of 2016, the National Transport Policy, Bilateral Air Services Agreement, International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, the International Air Transport Association, IATA, the Chicago Convention of 1944, SADC Aviation Safety Organization, SASO, and the Zambia Civil Aviation Requirement, ZCAS. The Chair, sir, according to our research, the aforementioned pieces of legislation and policies are adequate. This may not be encompassing of all the other policies and the legal framework, but from our research, this was adequate. Benefits of the national airline to Zambia. The re-establishment of the national airline is projected to bring in the following benefits: social and economic benefits. The introduction of Zambia Airways Limited has seen the flow of investment, trade, and tourism, which is contributing to the socio-economic growth of the country. This investment has enabled Zambian citizens to have socio-economic benefits such as connectivity, reach, and personal economic growth. Employment. Zambia Airways Limited has provided numerous jobs that are direct and indirect. The airline has employed a total of 45 employees, out of which 36 are Zambian citizens. The indirect jobs that have been created include service providers to the airline in the areas of aviation fuel suppliers, construction companies, catering and ground handling, amongst others. Further, the airline will be able to retain skilled human resource after expansion and attainment of full capacity. However, more employment opportunities can be created through the establishment of other units within the airline, which are currently being done by Ethiopian Airways, such as maintenance, a ticketing system, filing and dispatch, amongst other services that can be localized. Revenue. Zambia Airways Limited has and is contributing to the national treasury through taxes such as income tax, value added tax, airport fees, which include landing, parking, and air navigation charges. Competition. Other benefit is competition. The reestablishment of the national airline has brought about positive competition to existing airlines, promoting the reduction of air ticket fares, making it affordable for the first-time travelers to utilize air transport, and thus reducing monopoly in the aviation industry. With the projected increase of aircraft in the airline, with the projected increase of aircraft in the airline from 1 to 3 and subsequent rise in number of flights, it is expected that this may prompt other existing airlines to reduce their pricing of airfare and improve on their service delivery. The resultant benefits would trickle down to ordinary Zambians. Infrastructure development. The reintroduction of Zambia Airways has brought about infrastructure development that is required to sustain and support the operations of the national airline. Such infrastructure includes renovation of aircraft hangars, structures for the projected aviation training school, and office space accommodation. Open market. Zambia's central geographical position as a land-linked country with 8 neighboring countries has huge potential of being a regional hub to connect with these countries. The introduction of SADC and Africa continental free trade areas has created an opportunity for trade and business ventures that are likely to improve between states, with air travel being a key component in attaining this development. A national carrier. A national airline that is a flag carrier is the pride of any nation. It reflects and represents the people by marketing of the country through in-flight entertainment systems that advertise and showcase Zambia's tourism destinations, culture, traditions, and business opportunities available in our country. The short-term and long-term mechanisms put in place to ensure profitability of Zambia Airways. So the airline management has put in place short-term and long-term mechanisms to ensure profitability of Zambia Airways. On the short-term mechanisms, the airline has introduced low fares to capture high volume of passengers and encourage first-time travelers. It is utilizing 1 aircraft out of the 3 planned number of aircraft to minimize on operational costs, especially during the COVID-19 era for local routes. The second aircraft, which is a Boeing 737, is awaiting approval for foreign operators permit into South Africa, the route that they are planning to undertake. And the third aircraft will be delivered after an increase of the market on the local routes. Zambia Airways put up a lean structure in place to downgrade on the workforce after the COVID-19 pandemic as a way of minimizing operational costs. It has introduced in-house catering. It has also increased on the frequency of domestic flights. On the long-term mechanism, Zambia Airways intends to commence flights to different regional and international destinations. I must mention here, sir, that these mechanisms that I'm mentioning were projected by the company itself as a way, more of a business model on how they, what short-term and long-term mechanisms they're putting in place. So Zambia Airways intends to commence flights into different regional and international destinations. Further, it wants to expand on the local flights. It intends to run its own ground handling and also introduce own in-flight catering services in Lusaka. They have plans to establish Zambia Airways training school and also establish in-house maintenance services, as well as introduce a wide body of fleet to its operations, meaning larger aircraft operations to cover international routes. Opportunities in its operations and challenges faced by Zambia Airways. Zambia Airways 2014 Limited can explore some opportunities and is also likely to face challenges as outlined. With regards to opportunities, Zambia being a land-linked country has opportunity to become a hub for the whole region in terms of air transport. The creation of the training center by the airline will provide opportunities for Zambians and other students from abroad to be trained in aviation courses. Further, it will create a competitive base for students in the region. The reintroduction of the airline has brought with it the requirement for infrastructure to support operations, administration, and logistical requirements of the airline. This, therefore, created an opportunity for infrastructure development. The introduction of the national carrier provides a critical opportunity in the tourism sector. Notwithstanding all the highlighted opportunities, the airline has the following challenges and observations. Lack of an approved maintenance organization. This is a mechanism, sir, in which the airline could be serviced or maintained within Zambia. The Air Mall is based in Ethiopia, where the current maintenance is conducted. The other challenge is the high cost of aviation fuel due to a long supply chain. The airline has not employed local technical personnel to allow for transfer of knowledge from Ethiopian technical experts. At the time of our research or study, the employees at the airline are not unionized and have no forum to issue out their grievances. Categories for fire and rescue services of some airfields within the country, such as in Fue, which has a category 3, are below the minimum required category for handling the aircraft currently on the Zambia Airways Limited inventory, which is restricting them scheduling flights to such destinations. The airline currently has one aircraft operating Lusaka-Ndola, Solwezi-Lusaka route, and the Lusaka-Livingstone-Lusaka route. 2 or more aircraft can operate these routes simultaneously and can compensate as backup aircraft when there is a technical fault on the only one that are operating. The airline has failed to commence operating the Lusaka South Africa route due to the foreign operator's permit that is yet to be granted by the South African Civil Aviation Authority. This is because Zambia Airways Limited has not yet complied with all the necessary Zambia Civil Aviation Authority requirements to be issued with a recommendation for this permit. This means, sir, that Zambia Airways, one of the requirements for this permit, Zambia Airways has not yet complied with the Zambia Civil Aviation requirements for them to conduct a non-commercial demonstration flight on their projected route from Osaka to Johannesburg and back. So that means this is a requirement that they need to undertake for them to be considered for the issuance of this permit. The other challenge is the high operational maintenance and consultants costs. These are anchored on some of the agreements that were signed by the Zambian government and Ethiopia. Recommendations on how to enhance the management and operations of Zambia Airways. The Zambian government should consider the following: upgrading of Mfue International Airport and the soon-to-be opened Kasama Airport to Category 5 with rescue and fire services and infrastructure, amongst other major facilities to accommodate service the Dash 8 Q400 and any other aircraft that would fly to those destinations. The government should consider purchasing 2 new additional aircraft to the existing fleet. That is in the category of a light and medium category aircraft. The aircraft should have the following specifications. The light category aircraft, probably Cessna Caravan 208 Bravo aircraft, may be utilized to cover routes between airports and smaller airfields. We do realize that some of the airfields are not covered because the other aircraft cannot land in certain areas, in remote areas. Like for the routes of Lusaka, Jeki, that is in the lower Zambezi, Livingstone, Lufupa, Kafua National Park, and other areas like Kasama and Kasaba Bay. The current aircraft in use, the Q400, has a seating capacity of 78 and is not likely to make profit if it carries less than 85% of the total seating capacity. Therefore, the medium category aircraft, preferably HR-42 aircraft with a seating capacity of 48 passengers, may be used to undertake flights between airports when the number of passengers is less than 50, in order to avoid possibilities of cancelling flights or making losses. The Zambian government should consider conducting a thorough assessment to understand the modalities that were considered in arriving at Ethiopian Airways or Ethiopian group of companies as a preferred business partner in respect to other competitive companies in the aviation industry. We are aware that Ethiopian Airways is currently the best airline in Africa. However, the agreement that was entered into may not yield the desired results for Zambia Airways and the country at large. The government should consider investing more capital into the venture so as to have a more strategic position in the airline. This could allow Industrial Development Corporation to have more negotiating power after the current contractual obligations terminate. IDC should consider expediting the completion of the training center and obtain an approved training organization certificate in accordance with the Zambia Civil Aviation requirements. Number 3, the Industrial Development Corporation should consider completing renovation works for office accommodation at Kenneth Kaunda International Airport. They should consider collaborating with the Zambia Air Force so as to incorporate the expertise of pilots and engineers in the operation of Zambia Airways. These experts are already on the government payroll, and their incorporation will immensely reduce on operational costs for the airline. They should consider using the national airline for movement of its personnel, government personnel, and goods as a way of supporting this venture. In the likely event of the airline requiring an investment of more funds, Industrial Development Corporation or government should consider renegotiating the shareholders agreement, the management, and also subscribe with other organizations providing aircraft lease, technical support, even expertise if required. The government should consider entering into bilateral air services agreements with all neighboring countries to allow the foreign operators' payments to be easily accessed by the national carrier. Industrial Development Corporation should critically consider establishing an approved maintenance organization for the airline and other operators in Zambia. A local approved maintenance organization will create employment and job opportunities for Zambians. It would allow expeditious conduct of maintenance works. It create business for local companies and institutions to provide goods and services. The establishment of such an organization will allow for services like security, cleaning companies, aircraft spares, and other items. And it will, of course, reduce on the maintenance costs incurred by the airline when utilizing the Ethiopian AMO. Additionally, the establishment of an AMO at Kenneth Kaunda International Airport will provide the much needed technical support to many foreign operators landing at our hub at Kenneth Kaunda International Airport. In terms of recommendations for the Zambia Airways Limited should consider the following. Establishment of more domestic, regional, and international routes into other destinations. Renegotiate some of the terms and conditions in the agreements that have been signed by the two partners. These could include the following: the expertise agreement, technical agreement, and aircraft lease agreement. They should also consider engaging information technology expertise to develop a locally based ticketing system that could be operated at minimal cost rather than relying on the existing global distribution system and passenger service system that is being outsourced from Ethiopia. Zambia Airways Limited should consider employing and training personnel so that at the end, local personnel, so at the end of the expiration of existing agreements involving experts, the local human resource should be able to take up various positions in the company to reduce on most operational and maintenance costs. They should consider, or Zambia should consider, establishing an international catering branch of the airline at Lusaka, Ndola, and Livingston airports that will provide internationally certified menu that meets ICAO standards and also benefit the airline by offering the same services to other airlines. With the introduction of regional flights, the airline can reduce costs by having such services within reach. As I conclude, Chair, I wish to mention that the information that has been highlighted in this study was obtained through engagements with institutions and stakeholders in the aviation industry, coupled with our own analysis and research on the subject matter. The institutions that were consulted included the Industrial Development Corporation, Zambia Airways Limited itself, and the Civil Aviation Authority, the Zambia Civil Aviation Authority. Thank you so much, Chair.
Witness, thank you. Thank you so much for this very rich submission, very rich submission. And I want to believe that the members of the committee are itching to engage with a witness for good reasons, of course, in that it speaks to a number of gaps that the committee has been looking at in the course of its deliberations. But maybe before let me abuse my privilege as chair. I'll ask the first question and then I'll leave my colleagues to ask. Is there a reason why Zambia Air Force was left out of this model? Because this is an institution churning out pilots, etc., engineers every other year, and at great cost to the taxpayer. And if that model was to be, is that a model that Zambia Air Force would embrace? That Zambia Air Force becomes part of the model of the new Zambia Airways? That is my question. But let me allow colleagues to come on board. Honorable Samakai, Honorable Taulo Chewe, in that order. Thank you.
Much, Chair, and thank you very much, Colonel, for that good presentation. I've got three very quick interventions or observations. One, I think on page 4, you alluded to the fact that the aircrafts that were brought to Zambia were not those that were inspected in Ethiopia. Is there any reason why there was that shortchanged, why they shortchanged the aircrafts? That's one. Two, I learn with a lot of difficulties. Your explanation and bringing to light, in fact, you've helped us a lot to go into detail on the components of the expenditures. And it's now being highlighted that most of the costs are actually on consultants. This makes me think that we are being used by Ethiopia as an opportunity for them to make business. For me, this is not our business. This is a business for Ethiopians. And we are in this marriage hoping that maybe in future we shall have some business. But initially, I think we have given it all to them. Is there any good reason in your investigations as to why this was done? I've heard you lamenting as well that there is nothing good for us here.
Honorable Talo Chewe.
I don't know, the chair. Maybe I could be allowed to, maybe I lose track. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
The chair, sir, you did allude to the, you did refer to the business model that was implemented, and if ZAF as an institution, we were left out, and what we think we could do different. I don't know if I'm still with you, sir.
You captured it correctly.
Thank you so much,
Thank
sir.
you.
The reestablishment of this airline, I think I do believe there were a lot of assessments, a lot of consultations that were done. Even at the point when I believe Ethiopia was consulted or was engaged, they were looking at partnering with maybe the best company that was doing fine or still doing fine in this area. Ethiopian Airlines is one of the best airlines in this area. We are also coming from a history where we would say that we didn't do very fine. It led to the liquidation in 1994. But of course, we were led to believe that maybe this stage was probably just starting. Then other partners will be brought on board as they progress. We're still optimistic. I'm sure that in due course, the Air Force will still be involved, especially that certain items are now being brought to a fore. But we have the human resource, we have the expertise in terms of pilots and engineers. So it could be one area that the company would explore to reduce its costs. Yes. Otherwise, we have a different mandate, but we do. As an Air Force, we have a different mandate, that of protecting the airspace of Zambia. But we do have the human resource that could help this company to lower its operational costs. Thank you, sir. On the change of aircraft to which we had mentioned in our report, then we're not very sure what could have transpired in the period of when that aircraft was brought in, whether there was an issue with the other one. Maybe that's an area that the other registering institutions could highlight on, but we did notice that this was not the same aircraft that was inspected in Ethiopia. As per the requirements of CA, there's a requirement that they inspect the aircraft before it's brought into the country. So in terms of procedure, there could have been reasons why there was this change to this aircraft which is being operated. I don't know if I do answer that aspect through the chair. The area of interest in terms of to do with the costs that are being incurred in terms of expertise, like alluded to by the honorable member, There are certain agreements that were signed pursuant to this operation of Zambia Airways. Some of the agreements I must mention here, sir, that we've not had a chance to look at them in totality. Most of these submissions came from individuals, but it would help a lot if we actually looked at the figures and also verify these figures came from submissions. They are required to be consulted, but if they stand, I feel that looking at an airline that is in its infancy and with all these fees, it looks like it's in a situation where it may be deemed that it should not be helpful to help it grow. So any partners that go into a business arrangement, they look at how much they'll get from it. So maybe, like recommended, there may be a requirement that maybe some of the terms are renegotiated or looked into, so that we look at growth of the airline. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much, witness, for your feedback. Honorable Taulo.
Thank you so much, Chair. I have just one question, although I have a lot, but because of the recommendations that are coming from Zambia Air Force, I'll try as much as possible to look at how can we, as Zambia, proceed with this agreement. I know when you are starting any business, there are a few challenges here and there. You may not agree in everything. But how can we, as Zambia, perfect it so that at the end of the day, we benefit from this agreement? Witness, I would like to take you to page 12. Okay. Number C. Again, it's about the same agreement, where you say the agreement that was entered into may not yield the desired result for Zambia Airways. Now, in your view as Zambians, what practical measure can we put in place to ensure that we strike a balance? I'm asking this question. We have told this committee we have all that human expertise that it can take to reduce costs. IDC is an entity which belongs to Zambia, Zambia Air Force, Zambia Airways. May I say, we are all Zambians. What is it that we need to do to ensure that we protect this business as Zambians? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable. And maybe as the witness is responding to that question from Honorable Taulo Chewe, would it be the submission by the witness that there's probably need to relook at the agreement between Zambia Airways and Ethiopian Airlines? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair, sir. Like you've mentioned, this partnership or this venture involves two partners. We are looking at it from our side, and obviously I believe Ethiopia also is looking at it from the other side, Ethiopian Airlines, in which case both companies feel they should make a profit from this. Now that we've been in operation for a while, we're just starting. We've been in operation for a while, but we're still going. We intend to go far with this venture. In a business, after some time, requires an analysis and evaluation to see if it's still serving what it was established for. Now that we have two partners that are involved in this arrangement, with all these clauses that were signed and agreements, I believe there's a requirement that maybe the partners get together to look at where they're coming from and see how they can go forward. So is the case in which we had this COVID-19 pandemic. It affected a lot of businesses, but going forward, I believe all businesses are looking at what business models they can adopt to survive. Yes. So there's need to negotiate, maybe call the partners on a common table and renegotiate some of the terms. Thank you so much, sir.
Any feedback from the committee members? I see none. Thank you so much, witness, for coming. To place on record that your report is, I think, was thoroughly researched on. I thank you for the solid recommendations coming in, and we have no doubt that it will enrich the report as we make presentation to the Honorable Speaker and to the August House on behalf of the Zambian people. So thank you so much, and I think this is as it should be. We want to appreciate your being here this afternoon. On behalf of the committee, may I now just lift that immunity. I know that you enjoy the greater immunity conferred on you by the Constitution of the Republic of Zambia. But thank you so much for coming. Please, that water is for you at no fee. And thank you so much for coming once again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. Okay. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Keep watching Parliament Television, a station that brings Parliament closer to you.
The second session of the 13th National Assembly, which adjourned Sindia on Friday, 16th December 2022, will resume on Tuesday, 14th February 2023 at 14:30 hours. Members of the public are therefore encouraged to follow the proceedings on the following platforms. That's DSTV Channel 272, GoTV Channel 100, Topstar Channel 5, and on the National Assembly of Zambia Facebook page. Parliament Television, bringing Parliament closer to you.
Just don't come to my place. Never come to my place.
Tobias nampeka enza accident. Bezwa mgoneka so. Jepa nanga sininga ndinso inizi when Tobias.
Ya mpunga moto kupunga. Tawa no tawa.
Oh, lana nditi.
Sir, my best friend, Tobias, he was hit and run. He died in an accident. And he has left behind 3 kids. 3, sir. With the pregnant wife. all under my care. How am I going to manage them?
Wanilata Season 2, mad vibes to the best season yet.
I like weird people.
Somebody who's quite shorter than me, with a big behind.
Are you in a relationship now?
No.
Oh wow, it is what it is.
Garden boy, so che.
Like the little savage in you, so.
There isn't enough alcohol in this drink.
Alcohol, but in the alcohol.
After the episode, you came to the office and.
There's a bun in the oven. Huh? Oh.
Just ask her the question Wanilata.
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 No.
Okay. I need more alcohol in this drink. Like, hello, is nobody listening?
Zambia. Even saying the word is a multi-sensory experience. It somehow captures something of the essence of this special place in the warm heart of southern Africa. Take in the mighty Zambezi River, the majestic Victoria Falls that form Zambia's natural southern border, and the national parks overflowing with wildlife. Immerse yourself in the fast-growing towns and cities, teeming with history, light, and life. Then visit the vast lakes that seem to touch the stars and engage with a plethora of different ethnic groups, cultures, and languages. Together, they make up the intricately woven fabric of this remarkable country. To visit Zambia is to begin a love affair that will never be exhausted, and unlike any that you have ever experienced before. For all the superlatives that man has used in his attempts to describe Victoria Falls, none are able to do this incredible natural wonder justice. You have to see it for yourself. It is a truly awe-inspiring experience. Livingstone, once Zambia's capital, and the Zambian side of the falls have become a mecca for discerning adventure tourists. Peer into the abyss from Devil's Pool at the edge of the falls. Career down the powerful rapids from Batoka Gorge in a whitewater raft. Bungee jump from the historic Victoria Falls Bridge. Or fly over the falls on a flight of angels. Whatever activity you choose, you'll be left with a renewed appreciation for the sheer might of nature. Kafue National Park is amongst the biggest in Africa and is home to more than 130 species of mammal and more than 400 bird species. Enjoy the wildlife from a different perspective on a boat cruise or a canoeing or walking safari. For sheer density of game, South Luangwa National Park is second to none. It certainly lives up to its nickname as the Valley of the Leopard. The stunning Liuwa Plains play host to the world's second largest wildebeest migration and boast some of the most striking vistas you will see anywhere in Africa. At Kasanka National Park, you can view the largest mammal migration in the world when each November, literally millions of fruit bats cover the skyline as the sun sets. Zambia's bodies of water are as abundant as its wildlife. Although it is landlocked, this country has more water than any other in Africa. There are the long, meandering rivers, some of which are interspersed by waterfalls that are only narrowly surpassed by Vic Falls. Then there are the lakes, from the vast, remote Lake Tanganyika, far in the north of the country, which is one of Africa's Great Lakes, to Lake Kariba, Africa's biggest man-made dam. Kariba is an increasingly popular beach holiday destination that is strangely reminiscent of the French Riviera. Or for the best bath of your life, visit the incredible Kapisha Hot Springs. Another unique aspect of this remarkable country are the Zambians themselves. The country is home to 72 different ethnic groups and languages, all of whom have their own diverse cultural traits and traditions. One thing they do have in common: they are all unfailingly warm and welcoming. Zambians are famous for their very own special brand of hospitality, as well as the pride they take in their Zambian identity. Wherever you go in Zambia, you will meet people who will go out of their way to leave you with a positive impression and make you feel at home. So what are you waiting for? Book your trip now and enjoy the kind of African experience you've always dreamt of. Whatever it is you're looking for, you can always be sure to find it somewhere in Zambia. So let's explore.
My name is Jeff Murebwa, or to complete the first name is Jeffrey Murebwa, and I was born at Kalulu village in Chief Chiwala. I'm just turning 60 on the 20th of this month, 20th November. I went to Chiwala Primary School. That's where I started my grade 1, and I went up to grade 7. In my first year of attempting my grade 7 exams, I couldn't make it, so I went to repeat the year at Lupia Primary School. That's where I qualified from, and went to Chikola Secondary School in Chingola. That's where I did all my secondary education that is from Form 1 to Form 5. Those days we used to call them forms, not as you call them these days, the grades. So after school, basically, I had my first job at Apollo Enterprises as a purchasing clerk. Thereafter, I did a course with a college in the United Kingdom, diploma in sales and marketing management. So that was my main job for some years. And then I also now, after serving as group and sales marketing manager in Ndola, I went into pastoral work, where I've been for so many years. But may I also state that along the way I did train as a rather as a professional counselor, and I'm also a lawyer. I qualified as a lawyer in the United Kingdom, and I was married to my wife for 28 years, and unfortunately I lost her to cardiac arrest on the 17th of July 2016. I am not married yet, or I haven't remarried, because it's been very difficult to find Miss Right. My constituency happens to be Kafulafuta. Now, as I said, I was born and bred in Kafulafuta, and as I was growing up, really, Kafulafuta didn't look like it was anything that one would bother about in the years to come. We grew up in the village doing what every other child would do in a village setup, where I would go kill some birds with catapults, then go to steal some sweet potatoes and do some uvuni, as we used to call it. So basically, I grew up not knowing that Kafulafuta was actually a very wealthy place, until in the recent years, when companies have come to invest in Kafulafuta. May I be quick to mention that one of the thriving companies in cement manufacturing, which is Dangote Industries, is actually in Kafulafuta. Then we have Handman Lime, which is one of the top lime manufacturers as well. It is in Kafulafuta. We have Nelkant group of companies. In the sense that they have the lime manufacturing side, they have the cable manufacturing side, and they also have the metal manufacturing side. Then we have another company called Shenzhou, and part of Zambezi, Portland, is actually in Kafulafuta. So Kafulafuta basically is supposed to be a very, very rich place. So over the years, I noticed that despite having all these companies set up, and despite the wealth in the constituents, the people of Kafulafuta did not benefit in any way. To start with, the employment opportunities were supposed to be given to the people of Kafulafuta, and unfortunately, very few of them have been employed by these companies.
We're up in the ante. It's such a free upgrade. Now 40 on entertainment. this too could be yours.
That's right. It's your free upgrade. Pay for access and get upgraded to family.
Oh.
Pay for family and get upgraded to compact.
You know what I mean.
Pay for compact and get upgraded to compact plus.
Absolute ripper.
And when you pay for compact plus, the best is yours with premium.
It's gonna be lit.
It's your free upgrade. Na 40. Only with DSTV.
Particular session. Thank you so much for honoring us with your presence and for responding positively to the invitation. We are looking forward to listening and also hearing from yourselves. At the end of your submission, the members of this committee will interact with the team on matters pertaining to the operations and the management of Zambia Airways. Before going any further, let me inform you that as per Cap 12 of the laws of Zambia, you are conferred with the same immunity as is enjoyed by the members of parliament. That means that whatever you said during these deliberations would not be used against you in any court of law unless you decide to deliberately mislead the committee. We, however, believe that there's no reason as to why the witness would choose to deliberately mislead the committee. To that effect, we're looking forward to a fruitful and a truthful conversation with yourselves. So in terms of how we're going to proceed, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves, and thereafter the members of the committee will introduce themselves, and at that point we'll get into business. So over to you, witness.
Good morning, Honorable Chair. Good morning, Honorable members of the committee. My name is Eric Mpuku. I'm the Executive Director of the Zambia Institute of Policy Analysis and Research. We're very honored and pleased to have this opportunity to share our thoughts on the case of Zambia Airways. Thank you. I'll ask my colleagues to introduce themselves.
Good morning, Honorable Chair and members. My name is Zali Chikuba. I'm the Senior Research Fellow at ZIPA. Thank you.
Good morning, Honorable Chair, and good morning, Honorable members. My name is Shimukunku Manjishi. I'm a Research Fellow at ZIPA. Thank you.
Good morning, Honorable Chair. Good morning, Honorable members. My name is Zambwe Shingwele, and I'm a researcher at the Zambia Institute for Policy Analysis and Research.
Good morning, Honorable Chair. Good morning, Honorable Members of Parliament. My name is Malindi Msoni Chatora. I'm the Acting Head of the Transport and Infrastructure Development Unit at ZIPA.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, honorable members of the committee. My name is John Mututwa, a Research Fellow at ZIPA. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, honorable members. My name is Liana Chikwekwe, and I'm a researcher at ZIPA.
Thank you so much, witness. I'll ask our colleagues to introduce themselves, starting with my immediate left.
Good morning, witness, and good morning, Chair. Thank you for coming. I'm Tasila Lungu, Member of Parliament for Chawama constituency.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, witness. I'm Francis Robert Kapianga, Member of Parliament for Mpika constituency.
Thank you, Chair. Witness, welcome. My name is Newton Samakai, Member of Parliament for Mwinilunga constituency in the Northwestern Province, and I'm a member of this committee.
Good afternoon once more, Chair, and good afternoon, witness. I'm Honorable Dr. Taro Chewe, Member of Parliament for Wanseshi constituency.
Afternoon, Prof. and witnesses. I'm Joseph Esimun Sanje, Member of Parliament for Mbabara constituency in Choma. Most welcome.
Secretariat.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Good afternoon, ZIPA. My name is Darius Kunda, coming from the Office of the Clerk.
Thank you so much, and my name is Sande Chanda, Member of Parliament, Kanchibia constituency. I'm also the vice chair of this committee. Our chair is attending to other issues within parliament buildings. Witness, let me also mention that we have one member of the committee joining us virtually, Honorable Emmanuel Msonda Mpankata. Honorable Msonda Mpankata, are you able to hear us? Thank you so much. We're going to now ask the witness to proceed with running us through your presentation, of course, touching on the salient features of the report, the memorandum. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. As I said, we are very honored to have been invited to come and share our views on Zambia Airways. The issue of Zambia Airways, the new Zambia Airways, has been a matter of public debate and discussions about the merits of introducing the airline and so on. And a lot of arguments have come up back and forth. But the question that is before us is the issue of the merits has passed, and we're now concerned with the operations of the line which has now been operationalized. So, but inevitably, as we present these arguments, they will still speak back to the merits of establishing this airline. So the conclusion that we shall make should be a wholesome conclusion which really asks questions which relate to the merits. So in addressing these issues, the way approach we'll take is we'll first of all talk about, in line with the questions that have been put to us, we shall talk about the adequacy of the policy and legal framework governing the operations of the management of Zambia Railways. Then the second part, we look at the potential benefits of the setting up the national airline. What benefits do we derive from them? And then we shall look in part 3 at the challenges and the opportunities that Zambia Airways is facing in its operations. And then finally, we shall make some short proposals. We shall look at possible short and long-term mechanisms that can be put in place to ensure the viability and profitability of Zambia Airways. Thereafter, we shall make some recommendations. The policy framework basically, first of all, we recognize that in setting up Zambia Airways, this was part of the 7th National Development Plan, which has been passed on into the 8th National Development Plan. And the idea was basically to transform Zambia into a regional hub of transport with air transport at the heart of the agenda. So the National Transport Policy stipulates that the objective of the policy is to facilitate the development of reliable, frequent, safe, and secure domestic international air transportation that meets international standards. So the measures, part of that process is the refurbishment, rather reconstruction of the international airport at Lusaka, the Kenneth Kaunda International Airport. And then this is also guided by the tourism master plan, the national tourism policy, and the tourism master plan. In terms of the operations of the airline, we recognize that aviation is generally overseen under the Civil Aviation Act, which provides for the orderly management and control and regulation of all civil aviation coming into and going out of Zambia. And we also recognize that this also sets up the Zambia Airports Corporation, which is in charge of all airports. Now, coming specifically to the airline, the airline is a joint venture between the government of Zambia and Ethiopian Airlines, where the government has 55% of the shareholding, and the rest goes to Ethiopian Airlines. So the Zambian government is a majority shareholder through the state holding company, the IDC. So, but what do we see as the main benefits which come from the establishment of this national airline? One is a job creation arising from the increased levels of activity through direct employment in the airline, through flight crew, cabin crew, and also the associated services which come to service the airline. We also see the promotion of tourism. It is argued that the existence operation of the airline facilitates tourism travel into the country and also around to the various tourist spots, given that our country is pretty vast in extent. They also see the possibility of raising revenue through business activities directly from the airline, but also the associated activities of tourism and agriculture. More people come in, more people are able to travel into the country. We are also able to use the airline for the purpose of exporting, say, fresh produce to whether it's horticulture or floriculture. So that provides opportunities for raising revenue. It has also been argued that the airline, as a flag carrier, has certain intrinsic values of symbolizing national pride, self-determination, and triumph. This is another argument which has been put across. But I think the more important part is the marketing power that this presents, that there is this airline which carries this flag, and it puts the country forward in the international circles. The increased air traffic also, it's argued, will in turn contribute to improved tourism management. In a symbiotic relationship, improved tourism management further increases air traffic flows, thereby promoting trade, tourism, and overall transport infrastructure. The gains from improved trade, tourism, and infrastructure development further promote development of other sectors, such as transport, logistics, agriculture, and retail and trade. We can also, there are bilateral agreements and multilateral agreements which are entered to. So when these are entered into, this can improve the country's relations and integration in the regional and global economy by penetrating regional markets. Our presence in other countries through our airline gives us this higher level of visibility. I now just want to, having recognized these advantages, potential advantages, we just now look at the operational challenges and opportunities that arise from the operation of the airline. I'll ask my colleague just to take us through that part.
Thank you, Dr. Mpuku. So I'll run you through the operational challenges and some of the opportunities that Zambia Airways can leverage on. So in terms of the challenges, obviously running an airline is a very expensive endeavor. So as with any other business, the airline also faces significantly high operational costs. And just to mention to the honorable members that we actually had an opportunity to engage with Zambia Airways to find out what key challenges they are facing at the moment. So the issue of operational costs, particularly related to the cost of Jet A1 fuel and maintenance of the aircraft, came up strongly. Another aspect that they're facing is the issue of limited capital. So Dr. Mpuku had mentioned that Zambia Airways was established for a joint venture between the Zambian government and Ethiopian Airlines Limited. And it required an initial cost outlay of $30 million, of which Zambia was supposed to pay 55% of that. And they've only so far met their obligation through giving the airline office space, which is valued at $5 million US. So far, according to Zambia Airways, the government has not come through with their other obligations. So limited capital is actually something that is a challenge to the airline right now. The third challenge is the issue of underdeveloped airport infrastructure. I think later on we'll talk about the airline expanding some of its network locally. While we've spent so much money developing our major international airports like Kenneth Kaunda, Harry Mwangankumbula, and Simon Mwanza-Kapukwe, the provincial aerodromes are still underdeveloped. So if Zambia Airways is looking to expand its network locally, that's going to be a challenge. So from the part of government, they need to look into upgrading the infrastructure there. The other challenge that the airline could potentially face is the issue of competition. There have been talks of the airline expanding its network regionally. So if they have to, for example, if the route between Lusaka and Johannesburg becomes operational, they will be competing with bigger airlines there that are already operating. So that's something that they need to think about strategically and come up with strategies for competing to take away some of those customers that the big airlines already have. And then, of course, some of the issues related to the issuance of foreign operating permits. If Zambia Airways has to operate on regional markets, they have to acquire permits to operate on those markets, and these have been very difficult to acquire, although just yesterday we learned that the permit to operate on the Lusaka-Johannesburg route has been acquired, so that's a good move. The last thing that could potentially be a challenge for the airline is the tax environment. I think the expectation from the point of view of the airline was that they would get some preferential treatment and be exempt from certain taxes, but that hasn't happened. They still have to comply to a number of tax obligations. And in previous assessments that we've done, actually, when we attempted to compare the tax obligations as well as other fees, we discovered that the Zambian tax environment as well as fees and other levies are actually substantially higher than those of other countries in the region. So this is potentially going to be a challenge that the airline might face. Despite having these challenges, there are also some opportunities that the airline could leverage on. The first one is the fact that as a country, we have identified the tourism sector as one of those drivers of growth. And in light of this, we have put in place a number of policies to ensure that we improve the performance of the tourism sector. So this is something that the airline could leverage on, because transport is not demanded for itself. So if that demand is created by promoting tourism, it means that even the demand for air travel could increase, and Zambia Airways could tap into this. And then also, the strategic partnership that we have with Ethiopian Airlines Limited is something that we can learn a lot from. Ethiopian Airlines is currently one of the best performing airlines in the African region. So in terms of expertise as well as how to run the airline business itself, we have a lot to learn from them. And then, of course, I had mentioned earlier that we have substantially improved the infrastructure at Kenneth Kaunda International Airport, as well as the airport in Ndola and Livingstone, and this is positioned to increase air traffic flow to the country. So this is something that Zambia Airways could also tap into going forward. And then it also goes without saying that our strategic geographical location is something that the airline could also tap into. We are surrounded by 8 neighboring countries that are more or less 2 hours away by flight, and this is something that we could tap into as an airline. The last opportunity, obviously, and something that really does affect air travel demand is the fact that Zambia has enjoyed for a long time peace and democracy in the region. It's one of those countries that is a beacon of peace and democracy in the region, and a favorable political climate signifies peace, stability, and security. So this is something that could actually help to attract traffic flow to the country, and something that Zambia Airways could tap into. So we're also asked to identify some short-term mechanisms and long-term mechanisms that Zambia Airways could put in place to ensure profitability going forward. I'll first discuss the short-term mechanisms. The first one, obviously one of the thorny issues that has been there for Zambia is the cost of air travel. So if the airline is able to introduce low fares, they could actually manage to get some of the market share that the other airlines have, and as well as convince those that choose to travel by road to maybe travel by air. But of course, this should be done in such a way to ensure that the airline still remains competitive. One other issue that Zambia Airways is looking to do in the short term to reduce its cost is to introduce in-house catering. Currently, they are making use of the private sector to cater for the airline, and this is being done at a higher cost. So in the short term, they are looking to establish their own in-house catering to reduce on the catering costs. And then, of course, I had mentioned earlier that the airline is looking to expand its network locally, but also to increase the frequency of the flights. Because currently the airline only flies about 3 times a week, so that's very limiting for other people that may need to travel on the other days of the week. So increasing the frequency of the flights could also work to improve the sales and revenue of the airline. Moving on to the long-term mechanisms, of course, the number one issue that has been talked about in the news of late is the introduction of the Lusaka-Johannesburg route. So tapping into the regional markets is something that the airline is looking to do in the long term to increase its profitability. So the airline is exploring the possibility of introducing regional and international flights, and this will help it tap into larger markets from other countries and regions with higher passenger traffic compared to domestic routes. Another thing the airline is looking to do is to establish its own in-house maintenance services. I mentioned earlier that the cost of maintenance is something that is taking up a big chunk of the cost of the airline, because right now the maintenance of the aircraft is done out of the country. So they are looking to have their own maintenance facility here to reduce on the cost of maintaining our aircraft outside the country. And then, of course, another strategy they want to put in place is to acquire larger aircraft, obviously to have more people on board. Currently, we have a Q400, which we are operating with a passenger load factor of about 78 people, and this is such a small number of passengers to spread over the variable costs of fuel, maintenance costs, and other operational costs. So as such, Zambia Airways is looking into introducing wide and long body fleets that can accommodate more passengers to its operations, particularly for the regional flights. The other issue that they're looking to do in the long term is to develop local aviation skills. I heard sometime in the news recently that most of the top jobs in Zambia Airways are being taken up by Ethiopians. And the argument has been that there isn't any locally available skills. So with time, they are looking to introduce their own in-house training institution to ensure that they have these skills available locally. I think this is where I end with the long-term, short-term and long-term measures that the airline could put in place to increase its profitability. I'll hand back to the director to outline the recommendations and wrap up the presentation. Thank you.
Bearing in mind the opportunities that have been identified and also the challenges and the possible measures that can be taken, we want to make a certain set of recommendations and some commentary around that. We bear in mind that in making this presentation, we've actually undertaken discussions with the players in the industry, Zambia Airways itself, the Ministry of Transport. So we've had some opportunity of some insights, and some of the things reflect what they're actually thinking. But we shall also add our own thoughts to supplement that. So what we are recommending is first, should be increased liaison. Government must focus efforts on developing the provincial airport infrastructure and to upgrade the airport navigation equipment so to allow airlines to fly through and across the country. Two, that we develop strategies which help reduce high operational costs, especially the cost of JA1. In talking about that, perhaps I would say from the perspective of the government as a policymaker, government must also apply its mind to reducing the burden of taxation which the airlines have to carry. We've already alluded to that high unfavorable tax environment, which forces Zambia to be one of the highest tax costs in the airline industry across the region. That is why our airfares tend to be much more expensive than other airlines. Than flights into Zambia tend to be much more expensive because of that. Number three, we also develop lower fare structure to be able to compete with other modes, such as roads, in order to capture large volumes of travelers who may otherwise not afford air travel. This recommendation, though we make it, we recognize the contradiction that exists. Here's an airline which is trying to build up in a very difficult environment, but then it charges lower fares to try to attract volumes. So it's quite possible that you might price yourself out of the market. Number four, there should be a liaison with other governments in order to obtain foreign operating permits so that we can open new routes in neighboring countries. And we take cognizance of the fact that after political intervention, the foreign operating permit for going into South Africa has been granted. Sometimes the granting of a foreign operating permit is based on the credentials of the airline, the capacity of the airline in terms of things like safety, number of aircraft, number of employees, their technical competence and so on. So those factors are taken into account. What is the capacity of this airline to provide a safe service into this particular territory? So it's something which has to be undertaken very rigorously following the civil aviation regulations. Number five, we say we continue to develop local skills to reduce the long-term costs of outsourcing foreign expertise. It was indicated that most of the staff, the pilots, the technical staff, are Ethiopians. So I must point out, Honorable Chair, with a sense of history, I know we had this original Zambia Airways, and I'm sure Honorable has recollection of traveling on Zambia Airways. It was a very solid operation at one point, and Zambia Airways used to travel all over the world, and it had cabin crew, top-notch pilots, to the extent that after the demise of the original Zambia Airways, these pilots now went abroad. Some went to Botswana, South Africa, Malaysia, India. These were trained Zambian pilots. So it's painful when you see now that there's nothing left. Even the engineers are all gone. But this was an institution which was very viable, very strong, let me say strong airline, which was performing very well on the international scene. Now we are back to zero. We're starting from the scratch. That is extremely painful. I know some of my younger colleagues may not have this sense of disappointment as I do, having used Zambia Airways considerably, the old Zambia Airways. The other recommendation is that one of the important aspects of air transport is also the freight. So it's important to venture into air freight transportation to diversify the revenues instead of just relying on passengers. We also recognize passenger transport has been adversely affected by the pandemic. Even the travel culture has changed since the advent of this COVID. And post-COVID, people's travel culture is going to be quite different. Because when COVID came, those who are, when you are having meetings now start moving, instead of having physical meetings, even international meetings, we started having them online. So now this culture is becoming a little bit more integrated in the way we do business. So you may find that people traveling outside the country or traveling for meetings is reduced. Not because they are fearing COVID, but this looks like a much more efficient way of conducting meetings. We notice also that there's a strong agreement between the Zambian government and Ethiopian Airlines, where a lot of the services, Ethiopian Airlines has agreed to provide the planes, is providing the pilots, the technical crew. They are providing a whole range of things. They are also providing servicing. They're providing the aircraft, and the aircraft have to be serviced and paid for at Ethiopian Airlines services. So, and it is also a requirement under the agreement that a lot of the senior management of Zambia Airways are from Ethiopian Airlines. So what we see here is that the agreement seems to be strongly biased in favor of Ethiopian Airlines. I don't think that Ethiopian Airlines can lose out at all in this deal, but the Zambian government, through the IDC, is going to lose out quite a lot. It does appear that way. We really have to put forward a very strong argument, business argument, to position ourselves on this matter. Otherwise, we will be losers. So it's important to go back to the agreement and look at it critically and say, does this agreement really favor the interest of our country? Okay? I'm not saying we should abrogate it, but it's always possible to go back into any particular agreement and say, let us renegotiate. And with the benefit of hindsight, we think that we made a mistake here and there. Can we revise this agreement? So I think the government needs to go back and look at that agreement. And that is not a matter we put across lightly. One of the things we also mentioned is lack of capital. The Zambian government has only put in, they are supposed to put in 16.5 million out of the 30 million. So far, they've put in 5 million. And that 5 million is in the form of buildings which have been given to Zambia Airways. That is the Zambian government contribution, not liquidity. Ethiopian Airlines has put in money, but it's also put in much more in terms of the facilities that they are providing. So, which means that our financial position is not that good. Okay, we are in a difficult position. Okay, we have not deployed all the money that is required to operationalize this airline. Okay? This is not a healthy position to be in. Airline business is a big ticket business. It's when you have to be properly liquid. You must have sufficient capital resources for you to go into this. It's not a Mickey Mouse operation. So you must have resources ready and deployed. If you're talking about buying big, we've got one plane now, which is doing all the rounds. That is not the basis for a sustainable business. It's not the basis for a sustainable international business. So it's important that if we're thinking seriously about getting more planes, bigger planes, which can ply the international routes, which can ply the regional routes, then you need substantial amount of resources. This is something which, so government has to look for ways of raising these resources. Where these resources are going to come from, I do not know. I cannot even imagine, because this is an airline which is just starting up. It doesn't have assets, just a building which has been given to them by government. So the chances of it getting a loan from a commercial facility are pretty difficult. It seems as if the fallback will always be government. So the pressure will always be on the government. So, but what we say, let's explore. Let's find ways of raising money. And then in terms of operation of Zambia Airways, you know, in the arguments, I listened to some of the arguments with great horror, the merits of bringing back Zambia Airways. People are thinking back of the good old days of Zambia Airways, when we used to fly. Honorable Chair, we used to fly. Let me say, Zambia Airways staff and government officials used to travel sometimes without paying. They would get free tickets. Government would also fly. They would not pay. So they contributed to the accumulation of a massive debt for Zambia Airways. Now, if that culture of free things comes back and re-enters the psyche of the Zambia Airways, new Zambia Airways management, then this is a failed project. In a general way, what we have put across, the arguments that we put across here, we have talked about things from the actions from the government, such as upgrading the infrastructure, operational strategies which have to be undertaken by the airline itself, and bearing in mind the relationship with other sectors. What we're saying is that government must think of evolving a grand aviation strategy and say, how do we enter this market? Okay? There are challenges. There are a lot of challenges which are presented. We have talked about these things, but these are serious issues of capital, lack of infrastructure. It requires resources beyond Zambia Airways, outside of that, for us to succeed. So what I'm saying, Honorable Chair, is that here we are climbing a mountain. It's the tough task that we are being called upon to do. And we have to be serious if we want to go along this line. Bearing that in mind, we should also be aware that there are alternatives to this national airline. Alternatives which you may reflect on, because there are private sector players who are already there. If I may mention ProFlight, Mahogany. And in the distant past, we also had Zambezi Airways, Zambezi Airlines, Aero Zambia. All those were private sector efforts at entering the air aviation business. Why I say that is we recognize that it is possible for a private sector operator to be involved in this. Is it possible that, is it really necessary for us to incur all these costs? What justifies us incurring all these costs? What is the full benefit to the country? Is the tourism that we are going to generate sufficient justification for us to make this mega investment? We should ask ourselves those questions, frankly. Is aviation the only way of promoting tourism in the country? I do not know. I have questions. I have doubts. So we need to reflect very seriously, very carefully. What we put across here is that the problems are phenomenal. It's tough using this route. I beg to submit, Honorable Chair.
Thank you so much, witness, for your presentation. I'm going to ask colleagues, members, for any clarifications, any questions. Honorable Nsanje.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And thank you, Prof. and team. I think your paper is quite good. It discusses the issues quite well, and I think you have also provided us with good answers to some of the challenges. Just a few comments. I think, like if you have checked that agreement with between Ethiopia Airways and Zambia Airways, that forms it. Maybe the legal position is, I don't know what is your comment, because I haven't. I think that's one of the missing points on the legality of the formation of the airline, which, if you check the agreement, is neither here nor there. So I don't know if you analyzed that aspect. And then two, in the issue of the maintenance, I think you have answered to some extent in terms of trying to develop the capacity locally. And I'm on the same view, because this plane is made by somebody, and just like when Toyota, a car is made by Toyota Japan, but when it comes here, everybody is free to choose where to service it. But in this agreement, the service is tied to go back to Ethiopia. I think those are some of the issues which we would want to get your position. Why should the service agreement be tied to the leaser instead of being free to look for wherever it's cheaper to service it? And also, like you are saying, to build capacity locally, so that we can also create jobs here, which is the core purpose of IDC, is to create jobs here. And then I don't know if you have looked at the profitability aspect, because from my analysis of both your paper and the like, I don't see any profit. So what is your comment on the profitability and the like? Then our population is growing. You have quoted 18 million. I think now we are 19 point something. Is growing. And like you have mentioned, years back, we used to have flights even from Mongo to Livingstone to Lusaka and the like, when we had a population of 5 million people in Zambia. What stops us now to have these strategic local purpose routes? Because a national airline is about local purpose routes that can help people move quite easily. And what more with a growing population, and of course other roads, Lubumbashi and the like, since we have a lot of business that goes on around there. Wouldn't that, instead of looking for the long haul big flights you're talking about, we actually get even smaller flights of 6-seater, 10-seater, that can hop between Mongo and Livingstone and come to Lusaka and back, and take a good number of people that want to go there or want to go to Lubumbashi and the like. Yeah. And then a few years ago, South African Airways, when it was at its peak, was flying to Lusaka 6 times per day. And now we are worried about congestion on that route. When we are coming from 6 times, we used to have a 7 hours flight, 9 hours flight, 12 hours flight, 13 hours, or 13, 15 hours, 19 hours, and 22 hours. So why not actually just introduce a bus service? The way Mango, Kurula, Ryanair, those flights, they are basically bus services that are able to still make something but transport people. I think those are some of my comments, which we can hear your positions on some of those. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Do we have any? And maybe as a rider to Honorable Musanje's submission or observations, the witness left us with one question as to whether the investment is worth it, considering that there are other private sector players in the industry. But I know that on page 6, bullet number 4, the witness tells us about a symbol of national pride, a national carrier as a symbol of national pride. And I don't know what premium we can put on national pride as a country. I'm trying to reverse your question, witness. You tell us that, and I'll read, besides the tangible monetary benefits of tourism promotion and increased revenue, the existence of a national flag carrier has intrinsic value of symbolizing national pride, self-determination, and triumph. In Zambia's case, a re-establishment of Zambia Airways signifies rebirth and a second chance, something that many Zambians can appreciate and relate to. This can further be used as Zambia's advantage as an important marketing tool for the country, as much as Ethiopian Airline, Emirates, Qatar advertise and symbolize their respective countries' culture and tradition. End of quote. In your own words. My second question, page 7, Bullet 1, under introduction of law fares, Zambia is characterized by a relatively low population of about 18 million people with an average per capita income of about 1,120 USD. The combination of these factors does not favor the development of a local aviation because of the resulting low demand for air services, as only a few individuals can afford to fly. My question would be, what do we need to do about this low population? You know, what do we need to do? Because a low population doesn't make business sense, according to this paper. So what should we do about the low population? Should we, yeah. Then I think the last question would be alternatives to this airline, which the witness alluded to. And of course, at that point, you made reference to private players in the industry. Would the witness favor Zambia Air Force coming into the picture as part of the model, considering that it would come with its own trained human resource engineers, etc., and probably human resource trained to handle civil aviation? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Let me start with your questions. You know, Air Force pilots are trained to fight, to drive jets, bombing jets. I remember a story where an airline, in another jurisdiction, a former Air Force went into civilian and was flying the plane. And he went and did some maneuvers like he's on a jet airplane or he's going on a bombing mission like that, which was extremely uncomfortable for the passengers. I would not, starting with that point, I would not favor using ZAF. ZAF is got certain functions and purposes, and they are trained to carry out military operations, not to conduct civilian activities. That example I gave you is just an indication of the psychological mode, but even in terms of operational nature, their strategy is different. If you're going to get pilots from the Zambia Air Force to go into civilian, they have to be retrained. They have to adjust their way of carrying out operation. And in terms of the structure of the institution, we should keep these things separate. This is a commercial operation we want to run. It's not a command operation. So ZAF remains ZAF, who does its military operations. If you want to use pilots from ZAF, you can have them on secondment, retrain them, and then they can participate. But we should not try. If the idea of a national airline, a commercial national airline, is not workable, then ZAF cannot make any difference to that. I would be very reluctant to have a conflagrating Zambia Airways and ZAF together. I think it matters. If that is the direction, you might as well forget completely. That's what I would say about that point.
Maybe before you lose your thought, Doc, what would be your thought around the use of Samora Machel Airport in Mbala for civil aviation as well?
Okay. I'm not sure. Is it closed? You know, let me put it this way. Let me answer you. I think the facilities have faced a lot of challenges. I've also had the opportunity of going around the provincial aerodromes. Many of them have been in a sorry state. But if there's an opportunity, an economic opportunity, say people want to go to Mbala, want to go to what is falls in Mbala? Kalambo Falls or Kasaba Bay and so on. If it's possible to use it, if the Air Force has no use for it for security reasons, we should use all available facilities. And not only for scheduled airlines, but also for charter airlines for commercial purposes. And this is alternative, I must say, Honorable Chair. There are charter airlines which can also be chartered for flights for tourists and so on. So Zambia Airways by itself is not the final determinant of tourism in all our localities. But let us develop all the facilities that we have. We can use them for various functions, various purposes, charter operations, relief operations, etc., etc. That is essential. The chair raised the issue of national pride. I don't know if you can really say our national pride just comes. Sorry, I'm critiquing what I've given you. I don't necessarily agree with what I've said earlier, but this is the evidence that has been given to us. I don't think national pride is necessarily coming from a badge, a national flag on a plane. I don't think so. That is not the only thing that can attract tourism. I will tell you one thing which can attract tourism, which can attract attention. If our
witness, you are contradicting your own submission.
Yes, I know. I'm critiquing my submission.
I don't know if you're allowed to do that because we're going to look at your report when we're making our report.
No, I'm giving a critical perspective of this argument I'm putting across. Okay? So the national pride argument has certain limitations. We put it across as an argument, but what I'm saying is that it has limitations. Okay? We shouldn't overblow it. Because in terms of elevating our status as a country, it's the activities that we get involved in, such as, for instance, a boxer, football team, winning, playing at the international level. Those are the things which command attention of people to the country, what the country is doing. And say, Zambia's got a powerful polo team. They are winners of the Africa Cup. Those days we used to talk about Loti Mwale, boxing. It's a Zambian, that's a Zambian flag. So there are there are other instruments we can use to elevate national pride. Then the other question was, the low population. The low population. Yes, the population is a factor, but I think more important is also the per capita incomes, the actual incomes that people are earning. So population is one thing, but then the average incomes is also quite low. That limits the capacity of these people to use the national airline. So we'd rather just jump on a bus instead of jumping on the national airline because our income level does not allow us to enter that. The legality of the agreement, this agreement is an international agreement. So it's a perfectly legal document. And if you are going to make any alterations to it, you have to make sure that you comply with all the requirements of international law. Let me ask my colleagues to step in for the other questions.
Thank you. Let me begin also from the military facilities, especially the ZAF that you mentioned, and also quickly mention that the International Civil Aviation Organization does not allow mixing military operations, be it pilots, equipment, or even landing bases for civil purposes. If you have to convert a plane that was used for ZAF purposes, like military operation purposes, for civil aviation, it has to be taken for a very thorough conversion process.
Just a point of correction. The question was not about converting. My question was very specific. I was talking about the human resource. I was talking about the human resource at ZAF, trained pilots, trained engineers. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think if I just say on that point, I think it's just that the staff have to be retrained because the civil flying is very different from military flying. The rules and the etiquette are very different. So that adjustment has to take place.
Thank you. So now let me move to the issue of the local demand of transportation. And the issue that was raised that if we have a low population and also low per capita income, which effectively translates into low demand for aviation transportation, wouldn't we be safer using smaller planes that have lower operating costs and also the overhead costs? I think the original strategy of Zambia Airways, if you look at the documentation in the planning processes, where that we would start flying with ATR planes, which are usually in the range of 35, 40-seater planes. They are lower maintenance and operating cost planes for the domestic market. And only for regional and international markets would we then move to jets. But I think what they have done is to put the cart before the horse, bringing jets to start servicing the domestic market before you even venture into the regional and international market. I think Zambia Airways needs to reconsider its strategy, especially on the domestic market. Smaller planes like ATRs can service the turboprops. They can service the local market at lower costs. When we look at profitability, yeah, it's not appearing in our discussion anywhere, but we have given hints about what could be done to improve profitability. Why? I think they only started flying in 2021, and it's very difficult to even dream of profitability in an airline. The financial projections of the airline were that the airline would only start to make profits from about 4.5 years to 5.5 years of operations. It will have to be supported through the money that is put in the initial investment into the business. So I don't know if there are any changes in the projections apart from those that were there in the period of planning from 2014 into 2020, when the negotiations with Ethiopian Airlines were. It will take at least 4 years to reach a point of the airline becoming profitable. So for now, it will have to be fed through other financing mechanisms. The repair and maintenance agreement that Zambia Airways has with Ethiopian Airline, I remember it was one of the subject of discussion, and it is like that the equipment has to be serviced by Ethiopian Airline because they are supplying the equipment, and regionally they are the certified repair and maintenance operations workshop in Africa, authorized by Boeing, and we are operating airplanes that are like the Q400 that is leased from Ethiopian Airline. It is also serviced through the Boeing facility. So the idea was Ethiopian Airline is the certified RMO workshop in Africa. So where else will you want to take it? Will you want to take Boeing and associated equipment within Africa? But there was a thinking behind that. As the airline grows, capacity will be built within the Zambia Airways to try and do some of the operations within here. There are levels of these repair and maintenance operations. There's the A check and up to C check. So there are levels that would be done locally and levels that would still not be done locally even after. Yeah. So I think that one it can be checked in the agreements, but there was a rationality behind the initial operation of having it done in Ethiopia. The legality of the airline, I don't know if I heard this properly, but before the airline was registered, there was a cabinet memo prepared, and it was accepted at cabinet level, and then the airline was also registered with the registrar of companies in Zambia as Zambia Airways Limited, 2014 Limited. So in that respect, and as far as we know, it is legally established. Maybe at the point of now establishing the varied shareholdings, what could have happened? I know that if you bring in a shareholder, the shareholder must also be registered. There must be amendments. I'm sure all those things should have been made. But if there was anything missing, I'm not aware. So, but I can speak to those that I'm aware of. I think I'll leave the other. If there's anything else I've left, my colleagues can come in.
No, I think all the issues have been addressed, the questions which have been raised. But let me just add one thing which I left out in my contribution, is that I think when you raise the question of the finances, we've not had sight of the financial analysis. I think maybe it's a bit too early at this stage for them to get a report to see how they are performing. But that also starts with the caveat that the projections are that profitability is not going to happen now. But it can still give you an indication of the direction of financial performance if we look at the financial analysis. But arising from that, I think what is important is that maybe the honorable members must request to have sight of the strategic plan of this institution, so that we know after over 5 years how is it going to progress, and the intermediate business plans from year to year, how is it progressing. These are questions which Zambia Airways management and this board must avail to you, so that you have confidence that it's going in the right direction and that the public resources which have been put in there are being properly utilized. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Do we have any close? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Doctor and your team, you give me an impression, and I think which impression I've also had for a long time, that perhaps what Zambia requires now is a situation where we go for low-hanging fruits, for us to move from a situation where we are, towards attaining or enhancing development for our country. And you talked about revisiting some of the agreements between ET and Zambia Airways. Give us comfort that there are certain things that when we look at the agreement, and if they are changed, they would be able to swing the pendulum the other side, and be able to benefit this country or Zambia Airways, as it were. Is my question clear?
No, the question is clear. I think the point that you make in your introductory remark about low-hanging fruit is important, because what you've alluded to here is that the cost of running this operation successfully requires substantial resources. And this is why I've also talked about a strategic plan, that you must be fully confident that you have the resources to put in this, because there's no room for half measures. Yeah, go ahead.
I think some of the things that might help to swing the pendulum are on the resource. Right now we are using quite a lot of Ethiopian airline administrative staff from the CEO. And if I'm not mistaken, initially the chief financial officer was supposed to come from there. But I don't know whether either the chief financial officer or the operations officer, the two, one of them was supposed to come from there. And it was like that, shared. Now, the issue is that there are Zambians that have been trained in the aviation sector. They may not be operating within Zambia, but they are found within the region, outside the country. So pilots, and our pilots are going to fly on the left side for quite some time. But we do have Zambian pilots in the region that could have come in without necessarily going the route of conversion. And even the conversion, the training of the pilots from ZAF had to be done in Ethiopia. And yet we do have local aviation institutions here. So there are certain things of staffing that can, I think, be relooked, considering that we do have resource, although it may not be residing in the country, but it is there, and it can be attracted back. I think also the issue of equipment. I think it's a raw deal that the equipment should be supplied by ET in its entirety. I think the airline must have the leverage to look into the market and see where it can get fairer leases, because now we are locked into ET. At what cost is it going to come? Is it pre-prescribed? Is it prescribed already? Can't the market provide something that is at a lower cost somewhere else? I think those are some of the areas that could still be investigated to try and swing the pendulum. Otherwise, profitability will not come anytime soon. Even if we swing the pendulum, it's still a long haul from now.
Witness, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you so much for your submission. Thank you for the memoranda. We thank you for the feedback, and we look forward to working with your submissions as we package a report on this particular matter for the Honorable Madam Speaker and for presentation to the House on behalf of the Zambian people. Again, thank you so much, and at this point mine is to lift that immunity, but to remain with a greater immunity. The immunity conferred on you by the Republican Constitution. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you for honoring our invitation, and we look forward to more engagement. If there are any issues you feel could still add to this report before we finalize, please feel free to send that through to our Secretariat. Otherwise, thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you very much, Chair. We should allow for the meeting.
Mother, for all that you have been and for all that you are, I thank you. And with all that I am, I love you. And this one is for you.
Mayo, nimwe inyali yandi pano panshi, nimwe tata. Mayo, kwati Solomoni. Imfumu iyakwatisha mano ubushiku nafuke mepanka sashove mayo nokutasha pafintu wanchitila nokulomba uwelelo papyo nakulufyanya fyonse mayo atile kanshafikako ine kumulo ilelo wemwana Fiance, ifintu wapitilemo pakufyalwa kwandi vamwansa ifilamba mwapoleshe imisowa mwalilile pakuti inembe kumukoveko nomwana ove munu mamayo mumakololo nentampulo shove ife wanchingilila kuvalwani mayo amapepo ayo upepa mayo wanshali kulola ukwaba batata ukabebe umwana wenu alikula kabili embila kabumba wakwe ifyuma wanshila pachalo tafipendwa nefikumo dokumonwa na mensa vyasansama mumashiwi wasosele mumweo wa ikele Nelio watile Ganshafika ko ile Kumulo ilelo We mwana Nafika ko Ine nafika ko Ine naishiva Ukaticha chinde Ulopepa Uyulesa Uwa makosa Nikakuluke Yonse ifyaka kwa wewe
Oh yes. Naisane mpapu papeniko nalila sana pafula papeni ndaleko nalila sana pafula papeni ndaleko Naisane mpapu papeniko nalila sana pafula papeni ndaleko nalila sana pafula papeni ndaleko nalila sana pafula papeni ndaleko nanyufiro kulira ineko ndelira nanyufiro kulira ineko ndelira ese anjimi antwale kona ine pampapeko nalila sana pafulaha kifika pembwa wandini kwisa waya vijengoza wandini kwisa waluvila foto nyunyondo wandini kwisa waya Agnes Lumba wandini kwisa wikalila Solomon Jere wandini kwisa waya Jojo Mwangaza wandini kwisa waluvila Nalila sana pafula mpapeni ndaleko Nalila sana pafula mpapeni ndaleko Nalila sana kesha fumineko nashindika banangi pamabwinga nomwenshi wafumineko nashindika bunangi babwinga ngobwinga bwandinibisa bweyisa kila sana pafula isukulu limonine eko twaile nenshito imoine eyo twaishiwa baima mukufwaye ntitono munangi amusumina ine wankana nalila sana pafula pesi pechiko chikondewa ndiwa bakwi business imoine eyo twachitile na kapito imoine eyo twakwete nechalo chimochine kotwaile twashita makwebo nomunandi twabwela byamwendera bwino ine fyabilikwa David na mawandi kwisa wawa Baby go home nalila sana pafula Baby go nalila sana pafula Baby go nalila sana pafula Baby go nalila sana pafula Batilo mwa umetalila Suminisheni ndireko Batilo mwa umetalila Suminisheni ndireko Ifilamba visavyo bukali waba kumutima wanjile Ifilamba visavyo bukali waba kumutima wanjile Emano kasisa ulikwi Kabalu wandi wa mayo Wamumona biso kuneli umwe Mufwaya Omfweko kulila kwani ese hanchi mieko Nalila sana pafula Wapeni ndaleko Ebona tambiro kwimba Nipesa ninga sontako Ebona tambiro kwimba Nipesa ninga sontako Evyo nachita nifi na filyanga Marianchi kwedere wandi ni kwisa wawa Hasta luka kasenge ni kwisa mwalubila Wali ba mungandanga na mwikala omwana isani na mwamfwa banina baisafunda Mutale letera mupape alila sana bafula Na ono mwaka lesa ala papa na puto kwe bati Encho Gabriel letera mwana wendi Bruno mupape alila sana bafula Alila sana bafula Yawe When you put it on when you put it on Efana tambira chese Nobody knows where they are When you put it on Wapwe ponda leko When in daleko Dale daleko
I worried all the time, I'm running out of time, can't take it a day at a time, sometimes. Man, our dreams have been too long since we were only young kids, and now we've grown the love still. And Zambili umafuna ntima Nevena mantanga zani kwila. What if we don't make it? Yeah, yeah. What if we don't make it? Yeah, yeah. Kuma tachoka nkutali Mulunga nalendi pulani 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 Ino zonse ndintawi Mulunga nalendi pulani Yobangaza ifeo. Yobangaza ifeo. Akubangaza ifeo. Akubangaza ifeo.
Hey yo, Prince. Yo, venue moyo ena maflopa. Sama trenda nyimbo zao wakatropa. Tepe na bride mafune zindikopa. Koma mbuye wangasanga kondwe kuti nzisipopa. Ni rule number 1 kumakala hambo. Potuka sipwe sama siyo panga zako. Rule number 2 wasakala ndisanko. Podile lotikape mawadi pa mamba pako. Kayangana kumpuyo ngati ndingo kuwa mpuye. Ndinakonza chani kuti numundi masule. Mandicho sabutali kwina kusomula mbule. Ule ndaundiwa utali koma.
Kachoka nkutali. Mulungu nalindi pulani. 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 Inu zonse ndintawi. Mulungu nalindi pulani. 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 Yobangaza ifeo. Yobangaza ifeo. Akubangaza ifeo. Akubangaza ifeo.
Do you want to keep the good times rolling? Then pay and get bumped up to a higher package. Nimbasela Nafuti by GoTV. Because when you pay your subscription, you get bumped up to the next higher package for free. To get more than enough of only the best entertainment on TV. Nimbasela Nafuti. Visit GoTVAfrica.com for more information and stay connected to get bumped up for free on GoTV. We got you. GoTV. Love it.
Wanilata season 2, mad vibes to the best season yet.
I like weird people.
Somebody who's quite shorter than me with a big behind.
Are you in a relationship now?
No.
Oh wow, it is what it is.
Garden boy, so che.
Like the little savage in you, so.
There isn't enough alcohol in this drink.
Alcohol, but in the alcohol. After the episode, you came to the office and.
There's a bun in the oven.
Huh?
Oh, just ask her the question one later.
One later.
One later.
No.
Okay. I need more alcohol in this drink. Like, hello, is nobody listening?
Zambia National Education Coalition advocates for child justice and Kids Alive Zambia. You're welcome to the Committee on Sport, Youth and Child Matters. First, we'll begin by introductions. We get to know each other. We'll proceed as follows. First, members will introduce ourselves, then yourselves, then Secretariat, then we'll guide what to follow. So members, may we begin by introducing ourselves.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning. Witness. My name is Singombe Edgar. I'm representing Dundumwe's constituency in Kalomo Southern Province. You are welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. My name is George Kasabira Kandafula, a Member of Parliament for Serenje Central and a member of this committee. You are more than welcome. Thank you.
Good morning, witness, and you're welcome. My name is Michael Katambo. I'm MP for Masaiti Parliamentary Constituency and a member of this committee.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Achinga Mioto, representing Karau Central, a member of this committee.
Chair. Morning. Good morning, witness. Karobo Pavyuma is my name. Servant of the good people of Sakire constituency, Kitwe, in the Copper Belt. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning. Good morning, witnesses. I'm Aden Banda, Member of Parliament for Chimama constituency in Kitwe. Thank you.
You are most welcome, our witness. My name is Evans Chilongo from the House of the Clerk. Thank you.
You may proceed and introduce yourselves.
Good morning. I am Tandewe Banda. I'm from the Zambia National Education Coalition, and I'm the Policy Analysis and Research Coordinator there. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Kapembwa Sinyangwe. I am from Kids Alive Zambia, and I am the Senior Manager for Programs there.
I'm Derek Mbuzi. I'm the Program Manager for Spring of Life program, the program that specifically looks at circumstantial children for Kids Alive Zambia.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Aroda Chivanga. I'm from the Zambia National Education Coalition as a programs assistant. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Mwawasa Feli, Monitoring and Evaluation Officer at Kids Alive Zambia.
So thank you very much. We'll allow the honorable member who is just walked in to introduce herself.
Good morning, Chair.
Morning. No, it's okay, it's fine.
Good morning, witness. My name is Munashawantu Imelda, Honorable Member for Mapatizia. Constituency Mapatizia is now famous for Ethiopia, and I'm the Vice Chairperson. Thank you.
So thank you very much, honorable colleagues and witness. And my names are Mushanga Sydney, Member of Parliament for Wacha Parliamentary Constituency in Cabo Central Province, and the chairperson of the committee. So first, you are very much welcome to this committee, Committee on Sport, Youth and Child Matters, a committee that is responsible, that looks at issues affecting young people and children. It's a committee of 10 members, 9 available, only 1 member is out for other parliament business. We received your submission, and as members of the committee we have had the time to interact or to interface with the submission even before the actual interacting with you as a witness. But before we proceed, any time that you appear before this committee or any other committee of Parliament or Parliament itself, the main house, you are protected under Cap 12 of the laws of Zambia, which grants members of Parliament immunity against prosecution for whatever they say while deliberating on various issues in the House or in committees like this one. This means that through that Cap 12 of the laws of Zambia, the information you give to this committee can never be used against you outside Parliament or indeed in any court of law for as long as you remain factual. So that's the caveat, or that is the condition. However, should you deliberately or willfully mislead or misinform the committee, the same law, Cap 12 of the laws of Zambia, can be used against you in the courts of law. I have no doubt in my mind that this won't be necessary, as I don't think you would choose to willfully mislead or misinform the committee. So with that guidance, I invite you to speak to the presentation as you interact with the members. Be free, be very open, because of that provision of Cap 12 of the laws of Zambia that is giving you immunity as you interact with this committee. So we went through, we'll give you at least about 20 to 25 minutes to do the presentation. Then we'll guide on the time that you are going to allocate to the deliberations, points of clarifications, questions, etc. So you may proceed and do the presentation.
Thank you very much. Let me begin by stating clearly how much of an honor it is for us to sit before you this morning. I think for us to have the opportunity to speak to such a high body that is entrusted with developing the laws of our great nation, and to have your ears and have an input into your deliberations, I think is a high honor for us as Kids Alive and as ZANIC. The matter that we're gathered together for this morning is on circumstantial children, a population that we believe is easy to marginalize and forget about, because this is a population that is literally hidden behind high walls. It is literally hidden from our sight, from our vision as a community. It's different in a sense from, say, street children, because these are children that we see, these are children we interact with as we're driving home, and it is easy to have them at the back of our minds. However, circumstantial children are unique in that regard, in the sense that they are literally isolated from society and are hidden behind high walls, and therefore it is good that we are very deliberate as we think about them, deliberate as we discuss interventions for their benefit. As you all know, my honorable members of parliament, circumstantial children are children who are in prison, who are in correctional facilities with their incarcerated mothers for no fault of their own. These are children who were either born in prison or went into prison with their incarcerated mothers at the time that their mothers were incarcerated, and therefore they have not committed any crime. They are not being punished themselves, but they are simply for their best interest behind bars as well. You gave us 4 themes to outline in our presentation this morning, and I will quickly run through the first 2, after which I will slow down a little for the second 2. The first theme that you gave to us was to highlight the adequacy of the policy and legal framework governing the support for circumstantial children here in Zambia. We're glad to begin by saying that Zambia has ratified very key international policy agreements, which I know you're very familiar with. These include the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Children, as well as the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, as well as the Mandela Rules. These are all international policy instruments that we are signatories of, and they all speak very explicitly about the welfare of circumstantial children. However, here in Zambia, since independence, we have not had a single act that exclusively deals with the subject of circumstantial children. And before 2022, before last year, all matters that related to children were scattered in very different pieces of legislation. But Zambia had finally ratified the Children's Code Act last year, which was a great milestone for us who work with children, and it helped put in one place all the matters that respect children. However, the subject of circumstantial children in Zambia is mainly covered in 2 legal frameworks. These are firstly the Zambia Correctional Service Act number 37 of 2021, which outlines and describes what a circumstantial child is, and very importantly makes it clear that all children will be supplied with clothing and necessities at the expense of the public, which means that the government has the role and the duty to provide all the necessities, including clothing, for the children that are in prison. Secondly, we have the Children's Code Act, which I've already made reference to, and what this act does is give the Social Welfare Department the mandate of providing welfare services to, among other children, circumstantial children. So the Children's Code Act does mention circumstantial children in one clause very explicitly. However, our cry is that because of the unique nature of circumstantial children, it is very important that there is an explicit piece of legislation, or perhaps a statutory instrument that clearly describes how best we intend to meet their needs, as well as supply them with what they will need. If it is not dealt with very explicitly, it becomes difficult to deal with children who are in a particularly unique place. So that is theme number one. Theme number two was on the number of circumstantial children in Zambia. Now you will appreciate that the number tends to fluctuate wildly sometimes. Often though, the number does not go below 50 and often doesn't go above 100. And the reason for the fluctuations is, of course, sometimes you have many immigrant children who have been put behind bars for their safety for an extended period of time. Sometimes mothers who have children are given pardons, are released from prison. Sometimes you have children coming in with their mothers who have been recently convicted, so the number tends to fluctuate. But at the time when we were making this submission, we had 75 circumstantial children in Zambia across the 12 female correctional facilities. It should be noted that even though the Zambia Correctional Services Act allows for children who are 4 years and below to be in prison with their mothers, it is possible to have children as old as 7 years in prison sometimes, especially when the mother has no reliable relative or friend outside the facility that they can entrust their child to. So that is the first and second theme. The third theme was to highlight the measures that the government has put in place to enhance the care for circumstantial children, and certainly the government has done many things to enhance care. The first is that the government has improved access to health services to circumstantial children and their mothers. So particularly in the recent recruitment of health workers that took place last year, many of the recruited health workers were put in health centers that are very close to female correctional centers, which obviously means that the circumstantial children will benefit from that. That was certainly a great milestone, and this was in line with the Zambia Correctional Services Health Strategic Plan, which is supposed to run from 2022 to 2026. Furthermore, the Zambia Correctional Command and staff provide day-to-day support to children and mothers in the facility through guidance, counseling, and spiritual well-being. So again, you understand that the needs of children in these correctional facilities is beyond the physical. They also need help with their psychosocial well-being. They need help with their spiritual development. And we're glad that the Correctional Service Command oftentimes employs full-time chaplains, full-time counselors who are employed by the Zambia Correctional Services to address these needs that these children have. So that is also certainly a very commendable step. The third is that the government, through the Ministry of Community Development and Social Welfare, has developed a guidance note for social welfare officers on supporting circumstantial children in Zambia. Now, this guidance note on how they will be operating and supporting these children has not yet been finalized. It's being done with the support of UNICEF. It's yet to be finalized, but the fact that those processes are already in motion, I think, speaks to the commitment of the government through the Ministry of Community Development. Fourthly, the Department of Social Welfare supports vulnerable children, including those with circumstantial children, through the Social Cash Transfer Program. Now, I'll get into this a little more in the recommendations, but at least on paper, the Social Welfare Department has the role of supporting not just the children in the facility, but those who might be left behind by mothers who were oftentimes breadwinners and have now been incarcerated and are not able to support their children. Social welfare has the role of looking out for these children and helping take care of them. The next is that the Zambia Correctional Service has remained very hospitable to partnerships and external support, such as those from Uwumi, Mother of Millions, Kids Alive, and even ZANIC. Speaking from our own experience as Kids Alive, we have not faced any frustrations in dealing with the Correctional Service Command. They have been very forthcoming, they have been very supportive, they have really been open to our interaction and our partnership with them. In our case as Kids Alive, we were actually able to even sign an MOU with the Correctional Service Command, which, as you know, is no easy task, because that is a security wing, and generally partnerships are something that would take a while to process. But the fact that they were even willing to do an MOU with us speaks to their willingness to work with partners, which I think is highly commendable. Then in the next place, the NGOs have been able to supplement government efforts in trying to improve the children and their mothers' nutritional base. So this speaks to my previous point as well. And this is not just for NGOs, but churches as well have testified to the fact that they have been, the Correctional Service Command has been very willing and open to having support from the outside, particularly when the support is directed towards children. Again, that is highly commendable. In the fourth place, the challenges faced in providing support for circumstantial children. So we wanted to bring this out in two respects. The first is the challenges that the correctional service themselves experience, but the challenges that we as civil society face in trying to reach out to circumstantial children. And in the case of the Correctional Service Command themselves, there is lack of coordination among the various prisons in their support for circumstantial children, as they are left at the mercy of the officer in charge of these facilities. So the officers themselves bear the burden of taking care of these children oftentimes, and that can be a challenge. In our interaction with these officers, they have said that sometimes they actually have to dip into their own pockets when the situation seems like it is becoming dire. They have dipped into their own pockets out of their own goodwill, out of their own sympathy, to reach out to the children that are under their care, because they do feel a sense of responsibility for these children. Then secondly, there is a lack of provision of the basic nutrition needs for the children in prisons, as the Zambia Correctional Service relies on maize meals for children, which we call as porridge, and for other rations. So children rely on their mothers' portions often, as mothers are made to share their food portions with their children. So there is no specific diet that is for the children, in an age-appropriate diet for the children. So the children often have to eat the food that has been served to their mothers, which is not always appropriate for children who are below the age of 4. So there's nothing specific that is for them. That is certainly a challenge. Then there's lack of adequate sleeping spaces, as children are taken care of by their mothers in these prisons. So children do not have specific bed spaces that are just made for them as children. So they often have to share sleeping quarters with adults in a very open space. And I'm sure you can imagine the challenges that come with that. As far as we know, there is only one facility in the Copper Belt, I believe, in Kamfinsa, which was developed with children in mind. Of course, we have to be aware that many of our correctional facilities were built a long time ago. Many of them are very old, and they do not, at the time they were constructed, they do not have children in mind. They were constructed primarily for adult incarcerated members. So there is no special provision for children. As far as the correctional service is concerned and their challenges, the provision of support is mostly dependent on well-wishers, such as individuals and the church. And the challenge, of course, is that this support might not always be there. So the day might come when NGOs, churches, individuals might run out of the will or the resources to take care of the children. The question obviously becomes what happens to the welfare of these children.